I really loved was podcasting him.
Wow, the end of the movie.
The end, the profound end line.
Very profound.
At the end of the day, isn't life about the podcast you chase after that you never get to record?
What's that one for you then?
For me, Tom Shadyac series.
Right, that'll always be
It'll always
one
be,
year ahead.
That's the key around my neck. It says Evan Almighty.
Yeah.
And someday I imagine I'll get to that episode 10 years from now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm chasing, I don't know what I'm chasing.
Penny Marshall, confirmed, next miniseries. I'm bringing this back.
I think so.
I think it's a good bit.
I'm sorry that we have to address this up top.
Yeah.
Because it's very boring. But I watched Jumpin' Jack Flash.
Correct.
The first Penny Marshall movie.
Yes.
A movie she was hired on late. It was supposed to be someone else, and she was brought. And I don't know why they were like, this director isn't working out. Let's hire zero-time director Penny Marshall. But they did.
Yeah.
Have you seen Jumpin' Jack Flash?
No, your comment was you said the most plot in any movie ever.
I mean, have you seen Jumpin' Jack Flash?
I have not even heard of this movie.
Particularly well-remembered movie. It's a Whoopi Goldberg comedy
covered on the podcast,
from the 80s. An early Whoopi vehicle.
Sure, it's one of her first.
About like a data entry person who starts talking to a British secret agent on her computer and gets sucked into like a whole like Cold War intrigue spy thriller.
Am I wrong in thinking that is immediately post Color Purple the first time studios are like, let's build a movie around Whoopi?
Even if it's not build a movie around her, it's certainly like she will be like, let's give her a script.
Yes.
And she will be the star. It's a weird pick for her because it's like she's, playing kind of like a bookish, nerdy, desk-bound person.
This is what's so fascinating about the Whoopster as a movie star.
The Whoopster.
I do love the Whoopster.
Is she just kind of became like undeniably famous, talented, respected, and then they were like, we have no model to fit her into.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why she was always getting back in the habit.
Okay,
totally. And would like take scripts that were often written for men, and they'd be like, let's rewrite this for Whoopi.
This movie was written for Shelley Long, Griffin.
Fascinating.
And the script was seen as problematic. Howard Zeef, that guy, was the director. They fired him and replaced him with Penny Marshall.
Wow.
And she rewrote the screenplay during production. So it was like an insane... like, what is this?
Jumping Jack Flash is 1 year after Color Purple.
Right.
It's her second movie.
She's hot stuff.
But
anyway.
yes, but wasn't Sister Act written for Bette Midler? Like, every Whoopi movie was basically written for someone else. And at the last second, they were like, what if we do a dramatic rewrite and let Whoopi put her voice in this? Anyway, go on.
Bette Midler, you're correct. I just wanted to check.
The role that she had in Star Trek was written for her.
Yes, of course. She demanded it.
Yes.
She pulled a Mace Windu.
Yes.
She was like, I love Star Trek.
Yeah. Put me
Where
in
is
Star
my
Trek.
role? And Roddenberry fucked with it.
Yeah.
Right? Roddenberry was like, she's too famous. That jerk.
Also, her reps fucked with, like, her reps tried to block it from happening because they were like, if you do TV, you're never coming back.
Yeah. She was right. Guinan, an amazing character.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Iconic character.
I agree.
Jumping Jack Flash, a lot of plot. Sorry. This is all very important for our Millennium Actress
I decided for some reason to watch any movie ever that depicts what I have decreed cyberspace.
Okay.
I made a giant list of movies. Some of them I've already seen. Obviously,
Doesn't sound like
The Matrix.
Sure.
You know.
Is this on a spreadsheet by any chance?
It actually I did it on Letterboxd, but it's that vibe.
Yeah.
Letterboxd is sort of the postmodern spreadsheet.
Can you export to XCO?
I believe
that should be its new tagline, the postmodern spreadsheet.
It's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
And I made a list of like 20, and then people started commenting. They saw the list and they were like, "What about this? What about this?" I started adding things.
Yeah.
And a lot of people said Jumpin' Jack Flash.
Interesting.
And so I was like, I guess I got to watch it. And I watched it, and two things happened. One, I realized the film does not exist in cyberspace. It's just chat room.
Okay.
She's just in a chat room.
But that's
It's a lot of
interesting. It's an early
screen.
chat.
At the time, that was cyberspace.
Somewhat.
Yes.
Somewhat. I was kind of like, my arbitrary rule was like wireframes. Ben, I feel like this might speak to you.
Like the Tron rule.
I want to see
enter
some
the grid.
wireframes.
Yeah.
When we're entering, cyberspace.
Biodigital jazz.
Yeah.
Sure.
Lawnmower man. What?
What do you mean wireframes, though?
Like, just like visually, you want to see some wireframes when like...
You want to see the holodeck,
rendered.
essentially.
Early, like, Tron animation.
Oh, yes.
It looks like chicken coop.
So like, obviously,
Sure.
the
I'm
other
with you,
thing
I'm
I
with
was
you.
trying to chart is like, what is the peak?
Uh-huh.
And obviously the peak is 1995.
Sure.
1995 is when, here are the movies. I'm going to read them out to you. Disclosure.
The most cyberspace.
That's 94. But
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Virtuosity. Hackers.
Hackers.
Johnny Mnemonic. Strange Days. The Net. And over in Japan, Ghost in the Shell.
Ben was fucking eaten in 95.
Like that is the... Like Hollywood collectively has the same brain quake where they're like, people need to have short peroxide hair and be like clickety clacking. Yeah. And everyone has to be called like Crash Override.
I'm in.
Yes.
I'm in. Yes.
They're always in.
Yeah.
It can be set in the future, it can be set in the present, but it's the same kinds of things. And then, you see it kind of tailing off, but then The Matrix comes a few years later and you're like, a lot of this was seeded in bad attempts.
But you're right. From like 96, 97, 98, it becomes deep supporting characters. It's what Jason Schwartzman always calls the go for cricket roles.
Yeah, I'm in. The, guy with the,
But that guy's no longer the center of the movie. It's not the main plot point.
Right.
Yeah.
Now he's just yelled at by the main lead to speak English.
Who's a little too cool for computers.
Yeah.
In English, please.
In English, please.
Yeah.
Like I'm 12.
And that means
I watched some awesome, kind of junky movies like I watched Brainstorm. Douglas Trumbull's Brainstorm, which is kind of a stretch for what I'm going for, but it's very cool.
Yeah.
I watched Brain Scan and Ghost in the Machine and The 13th Floor. You ever seen The 13th Floor?
No.
That's like a stir of echoes to The Matrix's The Sixth Sense.
Oh, dang.
Where they're kind of like, we're kind of doing the same thing. And everyone's like, don't care. This one's over here. I'm going to this one.
Now, our listeners try to constantly game out what we're doing next.
This is the problem. I caused a problem by accidentally watching Penny Marshall's first film.
At the time we are recording this episode, this miniseries has not yet been announced. It's a short miniseries. People don't know what we're covering next, right? But they're constantly reading the tea leaves, looking for clues to get ahead.
They're Swifties.
They are. You know what?
You know what?
There's only a few of them who behave that way, but yes,
a couple
that's
of them
what they're
are.
like.
Yeah.
A couple of them
you
are.
had that ease sort of, nickname before Swifties did.
We did.
I'm just gonna say.
We had the blankets thing. We had the blankets thing down.
That's interesting.
David logs this, right?
Lawsuit?
This happens constantly. And then I say to David, hey, David, if we're covering a movie on a miniseries that hasn't been announced yet, can you wait to log until later? And David says, no.
No, definitely not.
That's not how I live my life. So I just don't log any film I've watched for the podcast.
Because then they would really know.
That's
then they could
confirmation.
really confirm it.
So because I have the fucking iCal of when we recorded, when the series gets announced, I go back and add the watch dates.
Wow.
For everything retroactively.
That's intense.
It's intense. But David logs Jumping Jack Flash. Someone screenshots it, goes onto our Reddit, says Penny Marshall miniseries. And usually the bit is, if we have something on deck that we're going to do, I start to go,
we're never going to do it.
Never going to do it.
Never going to do
So
it.
people look for the tea leaves of me overselling that this will never come up again. This will never be discussed. I see this Penny Marshall post. I think I'm on the subway or something. I'm like in between two things. And I see this post and I'm just like, it'd be funny. And I just write underneath confirmed.
Right.
And I turn off my phone and I go off in the rest of my day. And then like 3 hours later, Marie and David and Ben are yelling at me.
It was just Marie who was mad. I was amused.
You are that meme of, what's his name? Roman Kendall.
Yes.
Checking his emails.
Yes. But the other part of this is, for the first couple years of the show, our joke would always be, and of course, the next miniseries will be Penny Marshall. We used to say that.
We would say that. It's true.
It would be our version of the, sorry, Matt Damon had to be cut for time.
We should do it.
Yeah. We're doing it next. I'm confirming
We're doing it right
here.
now. Okay,
right now.
Let's reform.
No, we are covering a very different filmmaker.
We are. I think Marie was really just mad at you because this was like one day before the live show, and suddenly the fans were making like 8 Reddit threads being like, "So Penny Marshall's movies are available here." Right?
Yes.
They were basically going all in.
Yeah, they were.
We had enough to worry about.
Yeah, that's how you throw them off the scent, so people never know we're covering Satoshi
That's
Kon.
why I'm playing 8-dimensional chess at all times with what I watch.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna log 4 Satoshi Kon movies.
Yes.
And they're gonna be like, I don't know though. That Jumpin' Jack Flash thing really threw me.
I know, like,
maybe he's just having fun.
I will strategically watch and log films in groups.
Oh my God.
To have them be like, he watched both of these on the same day?
Hell yeah.
And you could say I could just do this. I could do fake logs just for the sake of stirring up the pot. No, I'll do it. I'll be like, I'm going to watch 4 Eddie Murphy movies this week and have them try to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And of course, they almost figured out the 9th anniversary thing when I watched a few 9 movies, but then I logged 8 heads in a duffel bag and they went crazy.
They went insane. Listen,
this is all very inside baseball. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
We're talking about a masterpiece.
Got him.
That is not any of the
great film
we've covered today. This is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
It's a podcast about filmographies. Directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby. This is the most tragically cut short career we've ever covered. It has to be.
Yeah.
We've covered other people who passed away when it felt like they still had good work left in them. But talk about a guy just making 4 perfect movies and tragically dying before the age of 50.
Yeah, and he probably didn't really get a blank check, I guess, in the way we usually think about it. But you know, he's so worthy of coverage.
It's weirdly kind of retroactive with him.
Yeah.
I mean, now his films, I do feel like loom so large culturally, and we'll talk about this. Part of this is just kind of like the mainstreaming of Japanese animation since his death.
I feel like Paprika too, like that's the closest thing I don't know if you have an opinion on this. Like his movies didn't do like amazing.
No.
Like when they were released.
Yeah.
And nonetheless, they were so well received, and his like reputation was so strong that he would get weirder and weirder projects approved. Like he could make Paprika, even though Tokyo Godfathers was not a big, whatever.
Sure,
that's the closest thing I can.
That's the other thing with him. It was like his films were big in Japan, but they were not huge in Japan. Like his legacy there also only grew over time.
Yeah, they were well respected. I think his legacy only really grew when Hollywood directors started.
Yes.
Picking up his work and kind of, not ripping from it, but so to speak.
Well, I think even more than that, like there a lot of major directors who count him as a major influence in a lot of general and hyper-specific ways, but then also like 10 years of the internet being like, do you know that actually this movie is?
Yes.
Like he's a guy whose profile did get raised by, well, actually people online, constantly redirecting everyone to this is the real shit.
Aronofsky's the one who bought the rights to Perfect Blue, right?
This
we'll talk about that
disputed.
on that episode. It's disputed.
It's disputed, but yes, he bought the rights, but he never actually remade them.
Right.
In a very
but did he do
proper way.
that? Well,
but then some
that's
people
for that
question if he
episode.
did ever actually have the rights.
Yes.
That's for that episode, which we will have done at this time. It's a miniseries on the films of Satoshi Kon. We're calling it Precast.
Satoshi Kon.
Satoshi Kon.
Precast. Now you pitched Paprika Cast.
No, I pitched. Okay, let me find
this. This is the problem. I was running it both ways. One looks better visually, one sounds better out loud. Pod Precast. But what you pitched was Podprika Cast.
I'm trying to find it. Podprika Cast, is that what I pitched?
Yes.
We like to squeeze podcast into the title of one of their films. And his films tend to have fairly short titles. And there's only 4 of them.
Sure.
So we're already in trouble.
Pod Precast.
Perfect cast.
Perfect
so
cast.
Obviously, perfect podcast. Tokyo Podfather Cast. I don't know.
I said Podlennium Castris.
Podprika Cast. Yes.
Right.
You said, damn, that's good.
I did, but then I started saying it out loud, and I was like, what's cleaner out loud is Pod Precast.
Pod Precast.
You're the ones who are going to have to say this out loud.
Pod Precast.
But it looks bad when you just type that out. So this might be one of those, like, which is the real title?
It's Pod Precast. There we go. Okay,
there we
we've decided. Pod Precast. Okay, that's what this is called.
Today we're talking about a second film. It's called Millennium Actress.
Yes.
I think it's a masterpiece.
Is this your favorite? Have you seen all his films?
I haven't seen Tokyo Godfathers.
Neither have I. That's the one I haven't seen.
Highly recommend. I have seen Tokyo Godfathers. I highly recommend it.
I don't care if you recommend it. I won't see it.
Another masterpiece.
David's abstaining from the episode. He's recusing himself.
He will just be silent the entire time. It'll just be Griffin
quietly
saying, like, David, what do you think? And he'll just be nothing.
That's the thing that's fascinating about him is I feel like 3 of his movies have now been canonized as like these are 3 of the greatest animated films of all time. Tokyo Godfathers is the one that's a little ignored, and even still people are like, that one's quietly a masterpiece too.
It's quietly a masterpiece, and I will say it's one of the best Christmas movies of all time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's intriguing.
Yeah.
Our guest today coming in hot with hot takes. Entertainment editor, correct title?
Correct title.
Hell yeah. At Inverse, Hoai-Tran Bui, return to the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me again. Excited to get all Millennium up in this.
You were
just 3 millennials.
Just 3 millennials.
Are you a millennial?
I am a millennial. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm very
You're
firmly
sneaking in
millennial.
there.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're a couple millennial podcasters.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Look at us.
Yeah.
Someday we'll make a movie about us as old
Well,
men.
obviously this movie is not about a millennial.
No,
she didn't get trophies for finishing 5th. I don't know what the millennial jokes
think
are.
it is a very millennium movie in that sense of like it being 2000, everyone being like, let's look back.
Yes, right. Yes.
The century that just passed us. How things have changed. You love this movie. You have a poster of this movie on your wall.
I do.
You got the poster when you went to see it at the Metrograph. Was that your first time seeing it?
No, that was a rewatch.
Okay.
The first time I saw this way too young. I watched this as a child because my parents were one of those, this is an animated movie, you'll probably like this.
Right. We're
cartoons for kids.
How old were you?
Oh, I was probably like 10 years old.
I don't know what you're going to get out of this at that age.
Yes. But it kind of...
It looks cool.
It did blow my mind.
Right.
That was the movie, I think it was the first movie I saw where I was like, wow, movies can be like this.
Yeah.
And then watching more movies and realizing, oh, only one movie can be like this.
It's probably his least adult movie. Like it's his PG movie.
Right.
Like Perfect Blue, you can't show to a child, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
Paprika's scary.
Right.
Tokyo Godfathers, I mean, I assume there's some gunplay. No, is that one pretty fun?
Not so much. Do you guys know what Tokyo Godfathers
I know what
is about?
it is, because it's a remake.
I know it's a remake of Three Godfathers.
Yes.
That's that I know.
It's them with a kid.
It's
right?
them with a kid.
Yeah.
It's 3 homeless people who discover a kid on Christmas Eve.
Wait, that sounds heartwarming.
It's really heartwarming, but it's also quite, sad and melancholy and a little bit grubby.
Probably the one that is by default the most child-friendly.
I would say so, yeah, because it is like a Christmas movie in some ways.
Yeah.
It's very Capra-esque is what I would describe it
Okay.
as.
This movie is very like psycho-emotionally sophisticated too. Like
I would say like it's not for
feelings.
It's not for adults as the way that Perfect Blue and Paprika are. That they're not. It's not extra violent. But I would say it's maybe his most mature one because it feels like he hones a lot of the themes that he picks up and kind of explores in Perfect Blue and then does in further ways in Paprika. But it feels like his movie for adults in a different sense, that like he's exploring other mature avenues.
It's one of those movies where it's almost like Sarah Polly Away from Her, where I'm like, why did you feel compelled to make this movie at such a young age? And then the fact that he dies so young makes it kind of profound, where it's like this guy wouldn't live to make this film relative to his own experience looking back.
Yeah.
The fact that he as a 37-year-old was able to sort of like tap into this feeling of an age that he would never make it to.
Yeah. It does feel like a late career kind of movie, like the movies that Scorsese and Tarantino are making later in their career after they're done with the violence and bloodshed and looking back in a much more wistful way. And he's doing this in the middle of his career. It's his second movie.
It's a second movie. Yeah.
I know. It's not a tough sell exactly, but it's definitely like if I'm looking to like break out and make something like really like, commercial, I guess is the word, like this would not be where I would go. And I agree with you. Yeah. Second movie, it's an amazing movie. So whatever. Go off,
Perfect
King.
Blue also like didn't explode as much as it was well regarded. It had the
Perfect
benefit.
Blue is fucked up.
Yeah,
Sorry. When it came out, it had the benefit of like it was meant to be direct to video.
Yeah,
It gets bumped up to theatrical, so it was seen as like overperforming, over delivering in the Moana 2 way of like, look, no one expected anything from this.
I like that you're talking about Moana 2, a movie that has not come out yet.
We were just talking before recording about the new thing of like put everything in theaters.
Yes. It's the Mean Girls of movies.
I don't care if it's pure garbage. People will.
There is a Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead remake that will have been out in theaters by the time this episode comes out. And at the time we're recording, there is no trailer for it.
Why bother cutting a trailer?
It was
Who cares?
Produced for BET Plus, and now they're deciding it's only in theaters.
But it's really, what that is just, it's so maddening to imagine the conversations. People are like, did you know that we get like a cut of ticket sales?
Yeah.
That's money.
Wait a second.
We need that.
Right. And you're telling me with this plan, there are multiple steps. Like the movie has multiple
it comes
steps
out
in its
here,
life cycle.
then and on VOD, then went to streaming.
Yeah.
And we
it's
make
almost
money
like
off
you're
of
leaving
each of
money on
those.
the table by putting everything on streaming directly.
When we put it to streaming, we actually don't sell any tickets.
That's so weird.
Why were we doing that again? What was the deal with that? We put Dune on streaming. We did that, right?
Right.
Dune, that movie.
And certainly that made us more money than when we put it in theater. Oh no, wait.
The Matrix Resurrect. We put that one right onto streaming. Right there.
Good.
Anyway, it's fine. It's good that they did that.
Everything's good. Yeah, Yeah, no, I got this. I imported a British version of Millennium Actress because it was the only place where they released it in 4K.
That's true. I have the Steelbook, but it's a Blu-ray. That's true.
And it is one of the last major animated films to actually be done on cells.
Hell yeah.
At an era where like Disney had already transitioned to digital incapate like 10 plus years earlier.
Right.
Most of Japan, the major work had as well. This is like kind of seen as the last significant work through the gates of purely like people painting on physical things and then using cameras to shoot it. And they did this 4K restoration that I think led into it getting its sort of re-release, it playing at Metrograph a bunch. They did a new US dub and restored the original version. But
yeah, I checked in with the dub. It seemed fine.
I watched dub this time because I had seen it. I hadn't seen it until it was playing at the Metrograph a couple years ago and saw that version in the original Japanese. The American dub is good. It's funny to watch. I'm sure we said this a billion times when we did the fucking Miyazaki episodes. It's funny to watch the films with the English dubs, but the translation subtitles. Because it's always just that they try to make everything more conversational.
Right.
Where the lines are almost exactly the same, except they add a bunch of like, I mean, come on, man.
Yeah. The localization of just dumbing things down in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just sort of switched over to it because I realized it existed, and it was like, it seems fine. But this movie works.
It does.
It's odd in English in a way because any movie that's literally about Japanese people.
The history.
It's so much about Japanese history and Japanese cinema specifically.
Yes.
Which I think was a very cool thing to see. I feel like very rarely we see even Japanese films kind of go so deeply into Japanese cinema and like a love story for that. A love letter, rather.
Just one dub.
And a love story.
One dub complaint about Miyazaki.
Okay.
Because my daughter watches a lot of Miyazaki.
Humble brag.
Now she's watching Castle in the Sky.
Love that movie.
Is not appropriate for her.
I was going to say,
she
I'm surprised
is
you've gotten
young.
there.
How old is she again?
She's 3.
Okay, yeah, she's too young for that.
It has like guns and pirates and explosions.
Yeah, Mark Hamill being scary.
Yeah, Mark Hamill, so his performance in the dub, excellent, unsurprising.
Sure.
He's a pro. And she loves it. She loves the robots. She's just, I want the girl falling. That's what she says.
Okay.
James Van Der Beek he should have a couple years in jail for that one. Just a couple. I've noticed that in the prior terrible English dub and in the original, that character's played by a woman. And I think he's kind of trying to go for like the sort of very shrill, high, like little kid voice.
Pubescent, yeah.
But he's so annoying in it. And I'm just hearing his voice constantly. Oh, hey, what? Like, it's shut up, Van Der Beek. Oh, yeah, a lot of that. And there's a lot of yelling in that movie. It's a lot of like,
That's the other fascinating thing. I know we're going all around here, right? But like 90s, 2000s are the era of like Disney and Miramax trying to figure out how to make Miyazaki translate to American audiences and doing these star-driven dubs. Yeah. And none of them totally hit in theaters.
No.
It's seen as a major success that Spirited Away gets to like 6.
Sure.
Or whatever it does and wins an Oscar, obviously. But it's still like, this is never going to be seen as mainstream. It remains insane to like think about how recently a Miyazaki movie just made $50 million in theaters domestic, opened at number 1.
So happy it won the Oscar.
Deservedly won the Oscar.
Didn't feel like a weird oddball choice. It's like, no, this was a movie that like permeated American popular culture.
I thought it was going to win, and it was because it had the financial success on top of the critical acclaim.
Yeah, and even the people who weren't familiar with the movie were like, oh yeah, Miyazaki's going to win because he's Miyazaki.
But he lost for Howl.
Everything in between, Wind Rises, and
he wasn't even nominated for Ponyo.
He wasn't nominated for Ponyo.
No, which I was very upset about.
But a lot
at the time and now.
Weinstein trying to make the Miyazaki's work, re-editing, rewriting a lot, casting them poorly. Then Disney putting a lot of them only out on home
casting
video.
Casting them poorly? I have a soft spot for the Mononoke dub, I will say.
The Mononoke dub is all right.
There's some weird choices.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
But I think that Billy Crudup.
Thornton.
Yeah. Thornton. Crudup, Danes, Minnie Driver. Some good stuff going on there.
Just an era of... It felt like you would constantly be reading... As like a dumb animation kid who was reading about this stuff all the time, took a while for me to actually get into Miyazaki. But it would be like, why don't American audiences accept this? Here are like the greatest films in the world. They play well everywhere else. Here they're like punted to being art house stuff. Or Disney will only release them on VHS and put whoever the teen star du jour, the Vanderbeeks of the world, in to try to like get him in there.
Hey,
right?
They lucked out with Kirsten Dunst at least for Kiki.
Sometimes they nailed it.
Yeah,
Sometimes
she's great.
They totally nailed it.
I'm now watching all the dubs, and they are fine. They're fine.
As someone who grew up on the dubs, I genuinely have a soft spot for them, even though I do prefer the subs. But I think that mostly they're okay.
Like, I'm very used to the Ponyo dub, obviously.
Sure.
I've talked about the Totoro dub where the Fanning sisters are like have like Southern twang, which is really funny for a movie that's set in rural Japan.
They're trying to go for like the rural aspect a little too hard.
Are you a great big sook gremlin? That's a line reading I've heard 50 million times now.
The point I'm trying to wind up to.
What are you winding up to? Yeah, big actress. Yeah, big millennial.
90s, 2000s, this arms race between Disney and Dreamworks, right? Katzenberg leaving, starting his own animation wing, and being like, I've got to fucking beat them at their own game. We're doing hand-drawn, we're doing CGI, CGI's working, we're shutting down hand-drawn, whatever. DreamWorks very briefly establishes a label called Go Fish Pictures, which they could never quite figure out what it was.
But this was released by Go Fish, right?
And Go Fish was them being like, is this our...
I get it, because the DreamWorks guy is fishing.
He's fishing.
So he's pulled up some foreign films.
And they were like...
From the lake of art.
Is this Fox Searchlight for us?
Sure.
Is this like acquisitions
Right, they
of
released
independent...
Ghost in the Shell 2.
Yep.
But they also put out The Chum Scrubber.
Which is one of the most disastrous...
Was that a Sundance movie?
That was a Sundance
like, did they buy it
movie
at Sundance?
that
or did
cost
they...
$10 million.
Now, what is that about?
The Chum Scrubber stars our buddy Jamie Bell.
Scrubber. Jamie Bell, it is a friend of the show.
Okay.
I would say, kindly, it is a disastrous film.
Poor
about
Jamie.
like suburban teenage malaise disenfranchisement.
What was the other one? There was another film that was the exact fucking same vibe.
United States of Leland?
That's one, but that's Gosling, right?
Yes.
No.
Lex G on a recent episode.
Is in it.
Oh, Thumbsucker?
Thumbsucker.
Sure.
Thumbsucker and Chum Scrubber. How am I not confusing them?
Fucked each other really
Those
hard.
are not the same movies?
Not the same movie.
Look at this Chum Scrubber, though.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
He's scrubbing
he's
chum.
scrubbing that chum.
Why is he? Meet Generation RX, it says. And, because like medicine.
It has something to do with sharks, though, right?
My head is like a shark's fin. What's it about?
Suicide of a drug dealer in an idealistic but superficial town. Lack of communication between teenagers and their parents. The inauthenticity of suburbia. It's one of those movies.
Oh, are they trying to do like Train Spotting but for teens?
Or like, modern Burton, like 2000s Burton, where it's like, he ever figured out like the suburbs are bullshit, man.
But what if you removed all genre elements?
But where does he scrub the chum?
Everywhere. Where isn't he?
What does that mean? Why is it called that? Why did a studio allow a movie to be called Chum Scrubber?
Lex G in a recent podcast episode referred to the early 2000s era of the special little guy movies.
Sure.
Like clever little guys where it's like the Igby goes down. And then I think that morphs into the Leland Chum Scrubber miserable little guy.
100%.
It's
there's good versions like
Catcher in the
Mysterious
Rye
Skin
minus the charm.
Is Donnie Darko part of that?
Donnie Darko is definitely part of that.
Chum Scrubber is also a long-tail Donnie Darko movie.
Yes.
But the entire Go Fish Pictures arc is they acquire Ghost in the Shell 2 and Millennium Actress, right?
Right.
And they're like, this is us trying to like compete with Disney having the Miyazaki thing.
Right.
We're trying to popularize our own important Japanese animation over here. Millennium Actress gets great reviews, does not get a major release.
Right.
Ghost in the Shell, I think, does pretty well in theaters, but
that
neither
movie
one gets
is
an Oscar
really
nomination.
Weird. Like that movie, if you saw Ghost in the Shell, 1, congratulations.
Sure.
2, you're already confused.
Yeah, it's a weirder movie than what the reputation would have you believe.
It's that, and but Ghost in the Shell, it rocks, but it is not a movie with a mega intensely coherent plot.
Yes.
And Ghost in the Shell 2 is him being like, that movie was like too normal.
But it had like grown on like DVD over the years.
It's a cult
It
classic.
got a reasonable release. They do those two movies. It's like Go Fish might have their thing kind of figured out.
Yeah.
They spend a ton of money on Chum Scrubber. Chum Scrubber comes out, it makes, I believe, $35,000.
No, Griffin, it made $350,000. You robbed it of a zero.
That's worldwide. Give me the domestic number.
Let's see. You're right.
So chump
it made
scrubbers
about-
scrub them clean.
Yeah.
It made about $50,000 in the U.S. and $350 worldwide.
They
so.
basically, right after Chum Scrubber announced Go Fish Pictures is done.
It's about 1/20th of a black hat.
Yeah. So
They
Prize
put
Winner
out
of Defiance, Idaho comes out like 2 months after that.
Julianne Moore movie.
And they had a pre-existing deal for Casern, which is a live-action remake of an anime.
Yeah.
And then they were done. I just think it's interesting. They had this brief window where they were like, our competitiveness with Disney is forcing us to broaden Japanese animation in American theaters. And in both of those cases, they didn't do like star-driven dubs. The Millennium Actress dub was just like good American voice actors.
Yeah.
They put it out in specialty theaters. This movie didn't get an Oscar nomination because of the weirdness of it coming out the same fall as Tokyo Godfathers.
Yeah, it came out in America in 2003.
Yes.
Obviously came out in Japan in 2001. So, right, widely done. No, actually it came out in Japan in 2002. I'm sorry. It was at festivals in 2001. So, it took a long time to reach here.
And then both
I don't know what
films
the
come out in 2003. Both are up for Oscar, were submitted, and I think they kind of competed with each other.
The Oscar nominees for animated film that year, do you want to tell me?
Nemo,
anyone want to guess?
Triplets of Bellevue.
Yeah.
And
Belleville.
I'm sorry. Brother Bear?
Come on. Yes, correct.
In a year with 5, one of these two movies probably would have gotten in.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But Trips of Belleville. Remember that?
Love that movie.
Guy was playing a bicycle at the Oscars.
Wait,
yeah.
what?
They had a song nominated.
Yeah.
Belleville Rendezvous.
Yeah.
And they did a performance of it was one of those things where people are like, they're gonna like perform this?
Yeah.
And they did. And there's like a guy on stage who's like whacking a
Zappa
bicycle.
style. They just hitting a rusty bike.
Yeah.
That's sick.
It's fun. I
You
remember it
love
being
this
fun.
movie, Ben.
Great movie.
I've seen the
He's
movie.
seen it. He likes
Yeah.
the
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
You should watch the musical.
But I should see this
Yeah.
You
musical
should see the
performance.
performance.
A guy who's also kind of weirdly disappeared.
Sylvain Chomet.
He made one movie after that, I want to say.
He made the Jacques Tati movie.
Yes.
movie, The Illusionist.
And then I
Illusionist,
think he
which I like too.
I think he directed one live action film in France.
And then disappeared after that.
See, here it was about wokeness.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. I don't know what it was about.
My memory.
It's called Attila Marcel.
Who was in it?
Guillaume Gui. I don't know. No,
Yes,
no one
that's
I
right.
really know. Seems like it went okay.
I did not see this when I was too young. I probably should have. I remember reading the reviews.
Mhm.
I was still in my I don't understand anime phase,
Oh boy.
which it took me a while to get over. But I remember reading the reviews and everyone's take on it being like, it's weird that this is animated.
Sure.
Like, even the critics who liked it, I think Scott was very positive on this movie, were all like, it's an odd film to make an animation because it's pretty grounded in
He
reality.
gave it a critic's pick. But
Okay.
yeah, I think American critics just couldn't get that.
They
They were
didn't
like,
get.
cartoons have to be genre films.
They didn't
Right.
understand.
They didn't understand
They
how
didn't
you
get
can maybe blur the lines between reality and fantasy in interesting ways in
Yeah.
this medium.
When you see this as a 10-year-old, I assume this is the first of his films you had seen.
Did you see it in theaters?
I saw it. I want to say that my parents rented it on Netflix. Like
Like
Ooh.
the disc?
yeah,
early.
the disc.
Yeah.
Because a long time my
And do
parents had the disc.
Well,
Yeah.
of course, as
DVD
did I. But do you
rentals.
think they rented it for you because they were like, it's a cartoon?
I think so. I mean,
was there more thought put into it than like, here's a new animated film?
they would just rent movies that they're like, oh, this sounds good. And then they see it's a cartoon, so they let me watch it.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's fair.
So it was
Right.
their choice that they looped you in on, basically.
Yes. They were very open with the kinds of movies that I would watch as a kid, mostly if they were cartoons.
We stand.
We stand.
Oh, so like, what did you watch? Like, what's a cartoon you watched that was too grown up for you?
9 Lives of Fritz the Cat.
Oh, obviously. I
Yeah.
mean, I do remember watching Princess Mononoke too young and being
Yeah.
like, there's a lot of beheading in this
And
movie.
it's a lot of blood.
Yeah.
That my daughter cannot see that one. That
Sure.
one, I draw the line.
Yeah.
It's very violent.
She's
Yeah.
watching Wind Rises, though, right?
I'm sure she'd love that one.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
put on Kiki for her and she was bored by it. Anyway, carry on.
Bored
Yes.
by Kiki.
Yes.
All right. But yeah, the early 2000s, growing up then was
Mhm.
very interesting because there was that explosion of anime. There was that, the anime wave, not the Hallyu wave, it was just like the anime wave that was
Mhm.
taking place in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I think that was making anime in general more accessible and something that my parents were specifically open to just letting me kind of try whatever and read whatever and watch whatever. So it was basically just like I could choose because they weren't really vetting it.
Did they let you watch Ghost in the Shell?
I didn't watch Ghost in the Shell. I wasn't interested in that.
That was a movie that I would see on like at the rental shelf and be like, this looks really scary.
Intense.
Yeah, I was like, this looks scary. I don't want that.
So watching this, you felt like you had a sense of context for this film being unusual?
Yeah, it was definitely very unusual for me as a kid just because, I mean, even not knowing everything that was happening and like the inspirations that it took from real life Japanese actresses or the real Japanese history that it was portraying, just the way that it was made was so, new to me in general, and not just being an animated film, but because it was, I mean, I'm going to cite a YouTube video that I'm sure many people have seen, but the Every Frame a Painting video on Satoshi Kon and editing time and space. And he specifically talks about the way the editing is done, not in all of his movies, but I think a lot of the way that he does it in Millennium Actress, where it just goes from scene to scene without any real warning.
Right.
Yes.
And sometimes a scene will interrupt the next, and then the reality will converge on each other. The modern day will start interacting with the past and that kind of thing. And that was something that really blew my mind as a kid. So I was really taken and dazzled by that.
It blows my mind as a 37-year-old.
Yeah.
You don't see movies do shit like this.
You don't see movies do shit like
but
that.
But it's subtle what it's doing. Like, it's not like Gonzo,
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, and his other films can certainly go full Gonzo. I mean, like I feel like the backbone of Satoshi Kon as an artist is like subjective perception of reality, right? And this sort of like blending between
reality,
fantasy, imagination,
fantasy, identity.
And this is a movie doing that in a like ostensibly very grounded way.
Yeah,
it's using this framing device of like being elderly, looking back, memory, senility, perhaps coming in a way that allows you to sort of like build that into the framework of the story in a more, I don't know, literal-minded way. But yes, it's like a movie that does not hold your hand, that doesn't give you easy signifiers for when reality is shifting.
Yeah.
No.
And I think the way that it kind of holds itself back in terms of how wild and gonzo it can get in terms of blurring the reality in fiction and pushing the boundaries of animation makes it so that a lot of maybe the critics at the time kind of overlooked why it was animated, because it's a movie that really couldn't have been made in live action, at least to the degree that it was in this medium.
That was totally his take and pitch on the thing. Is like, I mean, I was reading the booklet that came with the fancy schmancy Blu-ray release I got, but also all the notes that JJ pulled up. And there's a really interesting thing, it might have been in the Perfect Blue dossier, but him talking about how he thinks the key to art is there being like a step in translation or adaptation, and that he feels like a lot of movies are based on movies and filmmakers are inspired by other filmmakers primarily, and that his background, his training was in illustration, but then once he sort of built his muscles as like a draftsman, he then started obsessively studying live action films and was like, I was not really paying attention to what was going on in animation. I wasn't looking to my contemporaries. I didn't want animation to be inspiring my ideas in animation. I really was looking to live action and thinking, what are things you could do with the live action language of storytelling, and then plussing that with animation. And this is, it's a script that like, I just saw One from the Heart is in re-release right now in a weird re-edited version by Coppola.
Yes, which I've heard some people say is actually maybe not an improvement.
I think it might be worse. I haven't seen the theatrical in a while, and I want to give that another spin.
Yeah.
But that is very much a movie, without it being as baked into the story or the themes or the premise, where Coppola was like, what if there are no normal transitions? What if like images blur into one another and the camera moves and time and space change and all this sort of stuff? And in order to do that in live action, he bankrupted himself.
Right.
Like he drove himself crazy and put himself in a financial hole, versus Satoshi Kon was able to do that through animation while also producing one of the cheapest animated films ever. This movie was made, adjusted for inflation, the budget of this film is still be under $1 million.
Incredible.
It is crazy.
Yes. Produced it in 2 years, did it on cell animation, but it's like he was very strategic about how he did it.
Right.
And for how beautiful this movie is, you study it, and for a lot of it, there's like almost no motion on screen, or only one character is moving.
They used a lot of pencils and paper from the garbage too.
Is that true?
No, I don't know.
David just making things up.
Let me crack open the dossier here. So, Perfect Blue. It's a little film that Satoshi Kon makes. That comes out. What should I make next? He wants to make Paprika.
Love the
adaptation of the novel. And that fizzles out because Rex Entertainment, who had financed Perfect Blue, said, we don't have the money for that, essentially. They went bankrupt, basically. So he contributes some work to some other directors. The only project that JJ could find that's listed is a movie called Jinro the Wolf Brigade.
Okay.
Some other stuff, who knows? But Millennium Actress we can trace this to Taro Maki, producer on this film, the producer of this film, I believe, who loved Perfect Blue and loved how it moved from objective to subjective storytelling seamlessly. That's interesting. Compares it this bending of reality to the Trompe l'oeil. How do you say this?
I was trying to practice it before the episode, and
Trompe l'oeil.
Yes.
Where you know, Ben, when you paint like something and it kind of make it look 3D, like back in fucking Castle times.
Castle times.
I think it just perfectly defined what it is.
You see this all the time too, though, with street artists who try to paint or draw on the sidewalk images that from certain angles will
like
look
the
like the
optical
illusion of
illusions.
depth.
If like the Roadrunner paints kind of like a tunnel.
That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
It's a classic
it's like if
Roadrunner.
paintings are real.
Is it that? No, it's
Wile
that the
E. Coyote
coyote paints the tunnel,
Yeah.
and then the Roadrunner will go through it. It's a really good gag.
It's so funny.
Whoever thought of that? Funny guy.
Right.
Who
Wile
thought
E.
of
Coyote
that?
paints tunnel, rubs his hands
He's
together,
gonna
gets
smash
excited,
into it.
bib around neck, fork and knife, licking lips, ready to go.
You know what's funny? Looney Tunes. You're
Rules.
describing them.
Roadrunner goes through a tunnel without a problem. Wile E. Coyote's confused, then goes, I'll chase after him. He immediately
Runs
slams
into
into
the wall.
wall flat.
What a freak.
Perfect. 10 out of 10. They did that 1 million times. It never stopped being funny.
Never stop being funny. But that is what Taro Maki compares Satoshi Kon's like storytelling style to, right?
And also his visual style to a certain degree.
And his visual style.
It's a good handle on basically his entire worldview as an artist, right? And his voice.
So
What if everything was possible, basically?
And also this kind of constant shifting of reality relative to perception of like what looks flat actually might have a dimension that you didn't perceive from the previous angle.
Yes. So basically it's like, do you want to make another movie like that? Right? Perfect Blue has gotten my attention. So the word stereogram is also brought up a lot as a sort of translation of this like concept that they're thinking about, where, depending on what angle you're looking at,
is a term they use in Japan for this type of art. Yeah.
The thing will, the picture will change if you look at it from different directions. So he's like, it's not like I want to make another suspense movie, like a thriller, like Perfect Blue was. The method itself is the aim of the movie, which is a very interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, because this is not an obvious, if that's the assignment, this is not the obvious movie to land on.
Yeah.
If you're coming off of Perfect Blue and they go do another thing with a weird sense of reality, I just want to credit JJ here because I think he wrote this very well. So Kon had his method, but he didn't yet have a story. Naturally, he turned to the two oldest stories in the book, boy hero science fiction or senile old lady costume play. But by his own account, he said, I looked for a story like a stereogram. I came up with several ideas, science fiction with a boy hero, a senile old lady in a costume play, something like that. I wrote them down. I tried to decide which one to choose.
Him saying that to the producer. He's like, I'm either going to go like boy does science fiction or old lady who's senile. The producer's just like, oh, you better fucking pick that boy.
Fucking put that boy in a spacesuit.
And he's like, I'm going to flip a coin and it lands on the senile old lady. And they're like, great, okay.
Calls him, I think I'm going to go with the lady. Okay, let's go with the lady. So thinking about this, make the protagonist an actress. Actors and actresses work both in fantasy and reality. A perfect situation for this kind of a tricky world.
But also on his blog before he died, he said some years later that a friend of his had emailed him in 1998 with the phrase imaginary great actress that like stuck with him. It is kind of evocative.
this is the whole thing with a filmmaker like this. Because he died, but he left behind interviews and blog posts, and you can really pour over everything in the record in this kind of, not obsessive way, but just this kind of like archival way of like everything he said is sort of interesting. Especially because he made a movie like this that is not the kind of movie people make. In either field.
Look, it is.
I mean, I guess in a live action, it's like Being Julia. It's like the bad version of this movie.
Sure.
Like an actress is like, oh, I had some roles in my day,
There's
I think a lot about Babylon by Damien Chazelle.
Yes. It's not about film or acting in the same way, but I feel like Big Fish is a much more conventional version of this type of story.
Yes. But again, all of those, I guess this has it too.
Yeah.
The thing of like, the old person's laid up in bed or in hospital or something.
She's thinking back on her life.
Or you find a box. Oh, what's in this box?
Dewey Cox has to think about his entire life before he plays. Right, yeah.
What's this picture of him?
It's part of the ocean.
The Atonement story, where she has literally the same haircut as the lady from Atonement.
That was Joe Wright's brilliant idea. They all have the same bad haircut. Then you'll know it's them.
And not only the haircut, the clip. They all have the little clip.
But, okay, so... Kon brings back his Perfect Blue screenwriter, Sadayuki Murai, who he was sole credit on Perfect Blue. They are co-credits on this one. Satoshi Kon also gets a story credit, I guess, for originating the idea.
Can I just call out the thing I find very evocative in, quote, imaginary great actress that he seems to have sparked on?
Go on.
Is the notion of not just being like, I'm making a film trying to depict someone who is great at what they do. The idea to like build a fictional legacy. Right? That it's like, can I create a person with a career and a history that never happened and sell that to an audience, a sense of import?
But also it's like, that's true. But then he's deciding, they have to decide like, where in history do we leapfrog from, right? Like, what will we touch on? Like,
JJ said that, I mean, pouring over all the Satoshi Kon interviews and blog posts and everything, that he's incredibly self-effacing. So it's sometimes hard to get an accurate account of how things came about because he's had the tendency to undersell himself. But he basically said going into this, he did not really know anything about Japanese film history.
That's
that
so
they
interesting.
Started writing the movie just thinking it was interesting and then said, I guess I should figure out what this maps onto culturally.
Yes.
I will say I do realize we forgot one other more sort of standard, conventional type of story of this, which is Forrest Gump.
Yes.
What's he doing? He's sitting on that dang bench.
Yeah.
And he's about to tell you his whole life. Forrest Gump has lived through 100 years in American history. Here he goes. You're absolutely right.
And he looks like Tom Hanks the entire time.
Yes.
This is a double history where it's like she is going to tell us sort of about 1,000 years of Japanese history, but also 100 years of Japanese film history.
Mm-hmm.
So the ways that history got reflected through art, which is interesting. This movie is so interesting.
Yes.
I'm not joking. It really is.
It's
not facetiously said.
Yes. This is I don't think it's even 90 minutes long.
The credits roll at 1 hour and 22 minutes, which is astounding.
It feels like one of the densest movies I've
That's
seen.
the thing.
Epic.
It's not, I was about to say it's not action-packed, but obviously it has a lot of action, or at least situations. But like you could watch it and it could kind of bounce off of you.
Yes.
I think the first time I saw it, I liked it.
Yeah.
The first Kon movie I saw was Perfect Blue, and I think I sought this one out. And I think it kind of bounced off me a little bit. And even on rewatch, I was like, this is good. Like, this is incredible. And then you just keep thinking about it. And I think I'm going to need to go back to it again.
It's one of those movies you kind of need to watch like a bull rider because of how wildly things are shifting around, that you need to like actively hold on rather than passively let it wash over you, because you do need to be choosing in every moment how much you're trying to actually game out the reality of what you're seeing versus what really happened. Because you have these it's actual Japanese film history, this imagined career of this woman, her life getting mushed in with her career. They call out early on, like, isn't that one of her movies? And you're like, okay, so she can't really differentiate between the two. Mm-hmm. We're seeing both in the same narrative stream, but there's also sort of the story of the perspective of the two guys we're hearing the story from.
And the two guys, the documentary filmmakers, also are kind of drawn into this, what is real, what is fiction.
Right.
And they become participants too.
Right. And then you realize it's so fascinatingly built.
But one of them is like Slay Queen, and the other one is like, what's going on?
That's
their vibe. Yeah. That's why I think Lights Camera Jackson would like this movie.
Oh God,
he would.
He would vibe with it.
I'm sure he would.
Yeah. He loves old ladies, right? That just seems like his vibe. And then Hollywood history. There was like a Hollywood version of this one, especially. He'd be the guy who's like, oh, well, you're fantastic. Like he's holding the camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sitting here with Shirley MacLaine.
Wait, is he the Slay Queen in this?
He would be the Slay Queen.
Yeah.
He wouldn't
be the one who saved her life on the set of Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
So this is a very interesting quote from the screenwriter Sadayuki Murai. In Japanese history, there was a time before the war when they favored foreign ideas. They dreamed of continents. It was an era very rich in vitality. It fits so well with Chiyoko's young, poetic energy. It matches perfectly. World War II was the so-called time of struggles. That overlaps with her struggles in her adolescence. And then there was a time when vitality comes back after the war. That links up very well, too. Like they're trying to build a personal narrative on top of a historical narrative and a cinema narrative.
It's wild how much they make it sound like all of this was accidental, though, where they're like, oh, I guess that means we can do this as well. Because the Millennium Actress is a title. We were saying this movie having the whole attitude of, like, it's time to look back on the last 100 years and a century of such extreme progress. But you're also like, this is basically the 100th anniversary of movies. This is like cinema looking back on itself, which also means it's like the first century that we have documented in a certain way. Not only do we have the like cultural artifacts, but they're visual artifacts. They're like representations of real life. You're seeing real faces moving in motion from 100 years ago, which people didn't have 100 years before that. And you can like track the industry and the culture based on the rise and fall of these different things. I mean, it's also, it's just like, it's evocative to open a movie with a movie studio being demolished. And a man who basically looks like the Japanese Joel Silver crying and having a tantrum.
And then to open it with the entire movie rewinding.
Yes.
I don't think we've talked enough about that because it's such an interesting device.
Yes.
And it's, again, something that only Satoshi Kon would do.
And this Blu-ray booklet I keep throwing down like it's the Constitution, they call out that it was like a pretty pointed choice to make it a VHS because at the time they start producing this movie, it was like DVD had one. The animation companies, there was some big anime film that was the first one to skip VHS and go only to DVD. And then the PS2 had come out that year, and they were like, this is it. VHS is over. It's done. It's a dead format.
Poor VHS. Now it's back.
Now it's back.
Is it back?
I don't know. I feel like people kind of like it now, right?
I miss it.
Well, you can get a little TV. You can get a VHS collection going if you want.
I mean, my old VHS collection is at my parents', but they never threw it away. So
they never threw it away. You got a great base.
I'll say this: the effect of rewinding, the noise will always be VHS. Much like if someone is to stop in a moment, right, or like someone said something weird, it's a record scratch.
Yes.
Like those are just inherently, I think, going to be the
You're
sound
right. It's
effects.
attached to an old
sound,
medium.
But it's very like evocative seeing that happen in this movie, watching someone in animation see the crackle of the TV and have to sit too close and those sounds and everything. And it's like that's being captured at the moment it's dying.
It's also interestingly anachronistic for the movie itself because the movie takes place over film history going back to the 1940s through like the 1970s, essentially. And that's a time when VHS was really not prevalent. So like the whole device of rewinding it was something that doesn't feel even close to the career that she has, but Chiyoko has. But even so, it feels right. I don't know how to say it, but
totally. I think you're right.
It's what I find so fascinating about this movie not being reverse engineered from some desire to tell a film about film history or about acting. That both of those were things they basically found their way to. When it's like this movie is so good at expressing the weird like time machine quality of film, like film as cultural preservation, but also that thing of like, we did Buster Keaton last year. We're watching these movies that are over 100 years old. And you're like watching them and thinking about like imagining the time after they call cut and him walking over to whatever their version of a craft service table was. That this doesn't just exist as like a work of art in the same way that looking at a painting or a book does. You're seeing like an actual capture of existence at that point in time.
I think it adds like an extra layer of artifice too, because in the movie they're looking back at her career.
Yes.
And it's basically going through her mind and her imagination and her memory. And it's called to attention the fact that they're making a film about this too, which is why that VHS rewind is sort of the calling attention to that extra layer of like looking back that you are.
And when they're entering into the story, when you see the two of them pop up as like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern in her tale with the camera chasing after her, trying to make sense of what she's telling them, it like does feel like an interesting depiction of the process of documentary filmmakers, where it's like, isn't your job to listen to what they're saying and actually try to place yourself within it, figure out how to tell the story that they're telling you cinematically? And then there's the third aspect of it, which is like, I do think this is one of the best movies about the psychology of an actor I have ever seen. I think in a really fascinating way, it depicts acting process, which is so hard to depict and like is so infamously hard to talk about, where actors
super annoying
usually easily sound dumb or annoying or pretentious. And this is a movie that isn't about like method acting, but it is about the weird meshing of like, well, if you're doing this well, you're pulling from some real emotion. And whether that is because you have an innate sense of empathy and the ability to relate to situations that are not your own, whether it's because the material does remind you of something from your own life that you're pulling to, whether it's because you're able to just imagine it so thoroughly that it starts to feel real to you. At the end of the day, like in The Soup, if you're fucking 85 and you're dying, what's to differentiate your memories of your real experiences from the memories of the emotions you created to depict other experiences? Especially that's when that's going to be what everyone remembers about you. That's your whole legacy. Until these two guys decide to sit down with her, they have no idea what her fucking life is. Even this guy who spent time with her. Right, they know her movies. That's how she's going to be remembered 100 years later. This movie's so good.
It's so good. The way that it observes stardom, I mean, kind of going off what you're saying too, about just like her legacy as a star and how that's so wrapped up in her own personal life and history, in chasing the man she'll never be able to find, that leaks into her roles, and it makes her such a star, and it keeps her young too. And once she gives up on that, then she kind of becomes just another person and fades to the background.
It's another thing. I mean, I know they based this film off a couple specific actresses as a starting point. There's the woman from
Setsuko Hara is kind of the most obvious one.
From
one of the
Tokyo Story and Late Spring.
One of the greatest actresses who ever lived.
Incredible.
And was just retired for the last 40 years of her life. Just at a certain point stopped making movies. But there's also, like, there was a ton of that in Hollywood. Like Greta Garbo.
She retired laziness, just to be clear. Yeah. I mean, that's why she packed it up.
She didn't have that grind set mindset.
But she did a lot of the movies that are, she did a lot of movies that are like this movie, obviously. But the other one, what were you saying, sorry?
No, I'm just saying Greta Garbo is like an American analog who is this massive movie star and won Oscars, and then at like 42 was like, I'm done, and lived another 40 years, and wasn't like a recluse in a Howard Hughes way.
Lazy. That's why it's called Millennial Actress.
Yeah. Millennial, because they're lazy.
Taking handouts.
Yes. But I just think that's a thing that is basically like culturally gone, not just in Japan, but like in American cinema as well. I was watching some fucking interview where they're talking about the Making a Ragtime and how it was like they were trying to get Jimmy Cagney to do his first movie in 20 years.
Right.
He had been on the bench and he didn't want to come back, and they got him to do one more and he was retired.
Right.
And you're like, there was an era of our greatest movie stars at a certain point just pulled the fuck back for whatever reason.
Is there anyone like that now?
Gene Hackman's the one.
But even he obviously
does
retired
stuff every now and then,
an old age. Like in his, but like, has anyone like called it quits in like their 40s or 50s? I guess
their own terms.
Dan Lewis, if he sticks to his guns,
if Dan Lewis
would
sticks
be
to it.
someone like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, you don't think so?
We'll see. I mean, based on just some of our texts recently.
Ben's really close friends with.
Is he loosely
Oh,
attached
yeah.
to
Best
Tuesday?
friends.
Is he circling Tuesday?
Well, I can't say too much more. I might get us in trouble.
I'll just say this: he's been spotted around town wearing a calendar as he gets into character.
I just think, like, rise of the internet. This is a thing that starts to go away, right? Where, like, in the year 2000, 2001, you could have people who were giant movie stars in films that remain in circulation or watched, and then you're like, what happened to that person?
They sit in their house.
And it's not easy to check Wikipedia. You're not finding someone who's taken paparazzi photos of Gene Hackman going to an Arby's, right? You're like, these people just kind of vanished. And sometimes there's a tragic story behind it, and sometimes it's just like, they were just done. Lazy. I'm sorry.
Lazy as hell.
I mean, I remember that Audrey Hepburn retired early so that she could be a UN ambassador for like the second half of her life.
Yeah, and Grace Kelly, you know, she married a prince
I
and
guess.
then died. So lazy.
Yeah.
So lazy.
She was so lazy that she drove her car off a cliff. Whatever happened to her? What happened to Grace Kelly? Did she drive her car off a cliff or something?
I know. Dig yourself deeper into this one.
Yes, she was driving and she had a stroke and she lost control of the car and drove it off a cliff. So I was right. Wow.
Whenever you say that, David views that as lazy.
Pure
classic
laziness.
millennial Grace Kelly.
That sounds like her doing a lot.
It does.
Stroke, car, cliff.
Incredibly dramatic.
That's the most dramatic
R.I.P.
way to
Grace
go out.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Multitasking. Queen.
I'm so sorry, Grace Kelly, for besmirching your name. A couple other thoughts that Kon has before he gets into the making of the movie. One, obviously, he's working with a female protagonist again.
Yeah.
He thinks, he's like, I'm not intending to do this, but I do think the movies are quite linked. You know, the depiction of the relationship between admirer and idol, right? You know, fandom in general is sort of a theme. Like,
definitely less poisonous view of fandom.
So he was like, Perfect Blue had turned out so dark that I kind of wanted to make a more positive movie that's doing the same kind of thing, in an abstract kind of a way. Love is so beautiful. A tale of loving someone is beautiful, whether it's fulfilled or not. I'm surprised that love is always fulfilled in American animated films.
Yeah,
he's right.
Yeah, this is a very unfulfilled movie.
It'd be funny if like The Little Mermaid ended with Eric being like, "You're a fish. I'm not gonna marry. I have to marry like a
I mean,
aristocrat."
if they followed the
Goodbye.
original fairy tale, she would have become Seafoam and
She would
died.
become Seafoam and died. But like maybe she goes to heaven. That book ends with like, but maybe she's gonna go to heaven. You're like, she goes to heven, and they're like, no. Maybe.
It's because as a mermaid, she doesn't have a soul.
She doesn't have a soul.
But because she became human, they're like, maybe she has a soul now.
You're borderline now.
That's so nice.
It is really nice. You know, those stories are great. Kon claims I hadn't actually seen that many movies, so I had to consult a lot of books and films. Says he consulted upwards of 600 books.
Okay.
Visited a lot of old film studio prop houses.
Not very millennial of him.
No. He was absolutely so Gen Z when he was digging into like, you know, Japanese costume design in the 40s and 50s and stuff like that. They, you know, really going for like full fidelity to like the filmmaking eras.
Because you have these defined like the Showa era and the Heisei era and all these, major movements in Japanese film.
Faced a lot of questions from the press about why he was making his film in such a realistic style of animation. I guess that's true. Like I guess this movie is like less showy.
The colors are more muted.
Right.
The eyes are not.
Eyes are smaller.
Yeah, eyes are smaller.
This is also just an era where people are like, you should use animation to make animals talk.
Well, that is true. It's cool when they talk. That is true.
I do love when animals talk.
Yeah, it's awesome. And maybe they're wearing clothes. Maybe like they're kind of sexy. Okay, sorry.
It is funny. I think whenever animals talk in Satoshi Kon movies, it's always seen as a very bizarre and upsetting thing. And you're like, what the hell?
We covered this back in the day, though, when Brad Bird was setting up The Incredibles and they had to go pitch it to Disney with Pixar behind him. I don't know if it was Eisner or who else it was at Disney. They were like, this is not an animated film.
Right. These are all human characters. What are you talking about?
And he was like, superpowers. I can make them stretch. I can do shit you've never seen. It's like, you don't understand how animation works. So you have to imagine like this was like that times a million.
Yeah. Because he's making a biopic for a fictional person, essentially.
Right.
That's yeah.
Even as much as this movie blends reality,
sure.
outside of the science fiction segments at the beginning and the end,
yes,
most of what it's depicting is grounded. Like it's war films and it's this and it's that. But yeah,
that's why the subtlety of like, oh, we're moving, between fantasy and reality. Like, you can do that in live action,
it's
I suppose,
right.
But it would feel much more blatant. Like of like, oh, now we've moved into a flashback.
And Kon said his big thing was like, I don't want to have any, I don't want to be riffing on a clean established language. You don't want to do wavy lines when you're going, the camera moves through a window.
It's a really good way to know, though. It goes doodle doodle like that.
He said, I'm not doing any of the Wayne's World tricks.
So Setsuko Hara, obviously, obvious inspiration for the film. He cannot deny the parallels. An additional inspiration is an actress called Hideko Takamine, best known for Floating Clouds and 24 Eyes, also retired young in the 40s, in her 40s. But he also refers to Chiyoko as just like a folklore character, right? Like she's beyond like some easy analog. Makes the movie for a tiny budget, like you said. Was working off storyboards before the script was even finished. The film doesn't have a lot of wide shots. I think you were saying this. It's a lot of sort of telephoto lens feelings as a cost-cutting measure.
Right. I mean, he's a smart enough filmmaker that he was like, I probably can't afford wide shots and expensive backgrounds.
Right.
I need to make them count. But if I'm going to do that, I need to justify it within the story, which is you're staying within her perspective as tightly as possible. Yeah.
And it also lends to the whole, love letter to cinema kind of thing of the glamorous close-up of actresses.
Oh, yes. Drink it in.
Drink it in.
This is the first film of his scored by Susumu Hirasawa, who scores all his other films.
Unbelievable
Or at least scores Paranoia Agent and Paprika. I'm not sure about Three Godfathers. One of his primary objectives, apparently, was working with this person. The score is unbelievable. It's very cool.
It's great. The whole score during that montage, when we get sort of the clips of her life merged with the clips of her early career.
Yeah.
Incredible score.
And very crucial to a movie like this, where it's like, about people talking.
Well,
yes,
especially
it's about
to keep
the
flow between locations, places, times, realities. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the movie.
I mean, it's a hard
we've already done
film
that.
to recount plot-wise, but
it is.
You start with the demolition of this studio. Or I guess you start with the space shot, right?
Yes, you start with the space shot of her filming the film that she is, I think it's her last film.
Yes.
In which she's going to space and she's chasing after the man she loves while one of her coworkers declares his love to her, and it falls on deaf ears.
On the moon in space.
Yes, on the moon in space. She only has eyes for one thing, and her eyes are shining as she lifts off.
I just remember seeing this at the Metrograph and thinking when this sequence came up, wait, am I wrong about what this movie's about? Because I had always it's the animated film that's just like a woman trying to remember her life. And then this starts, and the first 3 minutes look like a standard anime film of this era.
Yeah, it's really cool.
You open on
the silo,
detailed rocket. Yeah. And then, revealed that this guy is watching it on a VHS tape.
Right.
I love the design of this character. Because
the lead
yes, what's his name again?
Schlubby guy.
Genya. No, I just think he is presented in a way where visually, I said Japanese Joel Silver, but he looks like a sort of gruff, cynical exec type.
He does,
right?
Yeah. Sure.
He doesn't look
suspenders, goatee.
He doesn't look like a sensitive, bordering on sycophantic.
He looks like a
nerd.
desk pusher.
Yeah. Yes. And his like sort of slacker cameraman visually
looking very 90s.
He should be the nerd.
Yes.
He should be the one like, no, you don't understand. Like, she was a legend.
Right. Is just sort of like, this is a gig for me. And Genya is yelling at him like, you don't understand the importance of this, but he's so aggro about it.
Yes.
But they're checking up a mountain to find this woman who has been off the radar for 40 years to interview her. As the studio has been destroyed, she was the star who was most associated with the studio for decades, and they feel the need to document it to have some sort of living testament to this woman. No one knows what she's even going to look like, but what her memory is going to be like.
This opening montage of like them driving, her in this sort of like post World War II bombed out right? With cranes, like landscape, and then the spaceship flying.
Yeah.
And you're cutting between all this stuff. And if you've never seen this movie, it's not like you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But it is laying subtly out what he's doing, like, for the rest of this movie without you really understanding it.
Yes.
Like this sort of imagery of her in various movies.
It's giving you that information right up front, and then
while they're also like in their car, like looking at papers.
Exactly.
Like, being boring.
It's good. Like, this is what you're going to see, and we're going to fill it out later.
Yes.
And I think this movie does capture very well the energy of that feeling of like when they're outside her door, right? And I guess first her sort of maid answers the door.
Yeah.
They don't know if it's her or not for a second because no one's seen her in so long. But that energy of going to see a real elderly person and being like, I don't know what this is going to be like. I don't know how functional this is going to be. I don't know if this is about to be upsetting.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they're going to be like cogent. My grandmother is 93 now, and she is kind of like remarkably sharp for her age. But I spend a lot of time with her. She lives in the city, and I feel like similar to this character, we have a lot of conversations now that I did not feel she was capable of having 5 years ago, where she kind of zooms out and looks at her whole life and simultaneously starts talking about things in much greater detail than I've ever heard her talk about before. Things that used to just be sort of like broad swaths are now like very minutely sort of like honed in on. And then other things she gets way abstract about. And she just wants to zoom all the way out.
Right.
And just kind of think about the larger arcs of her life. And I just feel like this movie gets that feeling down very right of like being with someone who's like, I don't know how many more conversations I have in me. Certainly of someone who really wants to listen. And I want to be heard, and there's stuff I need to express.
Yeah. I do sympathize with the guy too, where he's like, I love you, but like not in a weird way. Like he's trying to be chill. His face goes all red with her, right? And she's just like a nice old lady. Like
there are these guys like you come across in the film industry who are just these like horrible blowhards, and you're like, what? How did you end up in this job? And then you trace it back, and you're like, at some point, this guy was some like innocent, sweet film nerd who got hardened by this industry, learned how to be an asshole, like ruined people's life, and has made bullshit for the last like 20 years. But then he'll point to like the Cassavetes poster on his wall, and he's like, that's why I got into it. And this energy of this guy being like, I care so much about what you do.
Yes. I think it's a different kind of unrequited love in a way, because this movie is all about unrequited love and like how that drives a person. And I think it's so interesting after the depiction of how toxic and poisonous and dangerous fandom can be in Perfect Blue. He depicts fandom as being this kind of unrequited love and something that is much pure in a way.
Well, and like the closest thing this movie has to a quote unquote twist is the reveal where it's like, no, he was like part of her life at different times. There were like actual moments of meaningful impact between the two of them, and he goes there assuming that she would not remember, both because of her age and because like, well, someone like you would meet 1 million people. That was impactful for me, but why would it be impactful for you? And the notion of like viewing him as just a fan and then coming to realize like, no, he's this guy who exists in this space where it's like, you're meaningful to me. I don't know if you feel anything about me.
Unrequited love.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, it's like the most optimistic portrayal of fandom that I think I've seen in a while. That feels like very loving. That it's just like, this is a sweet romantic thing.
It's a dark time for fandom these days.
It is a dark time for fandom, but in a way, it's like, this is the one good side of fandom that we see. That is just another type of love.
And I just, like, she's playing someone who is born during the Great Kanto earthquake, right? Like, that's how she starts off. She's like, my destiny is, like, tied to earthquakes. So she's from the early 20s. And, like, she's representing the history of the country, to these people century. And to the viewers. And, and, like, that's sort of how I thought about, I knocked my head off. My great-grandma, who died when I was young, but, like, like, that's a person where it's like, when you were born, you know, we didn't even have whatever. Sliced bread.
My
cars,
dad telling me
whatever,
exactly.
You know.
My grandfather was born before cars existed, and that blowing my mind and being like, there's a link from that time to now.
How many channels on cable did he get?
You lived they lived
6.
all different lives, and it's so bizarre to think. It's baffling to think about. You're like, wow, I can't imagine my life without this technology.
But that's the millennium look back thing. That was like the fucking 99 2000 energy of just like
it's the millennial look back.
It's crazy how fast the last 100 years moved. You know,
when you think about it,
yeah.
How many cable channels do you think she had when she was born?
Her,
yeah,
at least 2.
Are you talking basic package?
She had like ESPN, but no ESPN2?
Right.
Like, do you think that's possible?
Disney Channel was an add-on. And their programming was bad at that point. They only had like Welcome to Pooh Corner and Dumbo Circus and shit like that.
Absolutely. So, you know, like she's recounting her childhood, right? Born during the earthquake, was spotted as a young girl, right? By a studio director when she was at school.
Yes.
And her parents kind of like forbade it, but she, you know, starts acting anyway.
You're fully taking at face value at this point. What she is relaying to you is just purely the story of her life leading up to how she became an actress. And then you get to the scene with her and the soldier that hangs over the rest of her life.
Right. Sure. But like, this is the first scene where like, when she's like recounting this meeting where her dad's like, you can't do this or whatever.
Well,
and
her
just.
Her dad has died actually because he died at her birth.
Well, who's yelling? Is it the studio head who's yelling at her? Like,
I think I got the feeling it was her teacher or something.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Like and they're just in the room with her. The guy, the cameraman's there.
Yes.
And that's like where you're just like, what is this?
Yeah.
Right.
And the cameraman is also saying, what is this?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they're in their regular clothes,
Yeah.
modern clothes and all that. And yes, then you're having this moment where, like you said, the sort of pivotal meeting.
She finds a soldier hiding
with
out.
the key.
Yes. With a key.
Well, he's not a soldier. He's a revolutionary.
Yes,
He's a revolutionary. He's an artist and revolutionary.
Yes, he's got a
And
suitcase.
it's like kind of hot.
Yeah, he's pretty
And
hot.
not just kind of.
Okay.
For her to be obsessed with him her entire life, he has to be super hot.
And he lives up to the
He
the hype.
does.
Yeah.
But his like paint splattered suitcase.
Yeah.
And also blood splattered suitcase.
Yes.
You
yes.
know, the imagery of him like painting in the snow, setting up his easel, like with no one around, creating a faraway world.
I was just thinking
He's got a little bucket hat.
What kind of like passing encounters you have to say something so poignant and profound that someone just falls deeply in love with you and thinks about you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like what? Like
I'm doing that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like what am I
Handed
speaking like
people
from
keys.
his
Yeah,
perspective?
we release an episode every week that changes someone's
Yeah.
No, yes. I mean, for sure.
Yes. Well, it's also like he is, in a weird way, he is instilling in her the stakes and importance of the idea of being an artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's like, here is a man who is like creating art in a time of turmoil against all odds, putting his life at risk, but he's like holding on to his paintbrushes and bringing them with him because he needs to express something. Things need to be documented. They need to be communicated. Like, for someone who's at the early stages of being pulled into an art form that's also its own kind of complicated industry, it's like this guy's saying to her, like, this matters.
Yeah. Art
This
for
is
greater
important.
meaning.
Yes. Also, he's hot.
And he's hot. Even if you don't see his face at first, which I found really interesting.
No, he's all in shadows.
He's all in
just
shadow.
Mouth.
And then the instance where you do see his full face, it might be a film.
Yeah, right. Because this sequence, I mean, she basically runs off, is chased away, runs to the train station, tries to catch him. This whole sequence that you're filming literally, or that you're viewing literally, then Genya says, like, I remember that scene, it made you famous, or whatever he says to her. And the camera guy's like, wait, I thought that was a movie? Like, at this point already, the two realities are starting to blur together.
Ben, you love a key. A serious
Yes,
key.
I do.
You know?
I love the aesthetic of it as just a piece of jewelry too.
And his whole thing of like this opens the most important thing.
Yeah, like if someone
What?
wears a key around their neck or carries a key with them, well, I guess that would be just your keychain.
Sure.
But you know what I mean.
It's a
If you wear it
functional
on your
piece of
neck,
jewelry.
It's a functional, yes.
Yeah, it
Yes.
serves some function.
There's the thing where she like touches pinkies with him.
Yes.
And then you dissolve to like her holding up her pinky like she's like, I will never throw this shirt away. You know, like that kind of
She's
vibe.
remembering
Like
it.
my precious pinky. Like all those little details.
I feel like with most great performers, there's this like conversation of, was there something that formed them in sort of action, an incident, right? That changed their relationship to their own emotions, their access, their sort of emotional intelligence or understanding? Or were they like born with some innate sensitivity and sense of empathy, the ability to connect, whatever? But like in the way that Barbara Streisand, who we talked about very recently, talks about like her father passing away, her stepfather being distant, you know, like this longing for approval from the men in her life who weren't there or could not reciprocate love. And that sort of like built her whole thing. It was the reason why at 15, 16, she was able to sing these ballads with a wealth of emotion. It's like that is this moment for her. I think it is the meaning of the final line, where it's like, it's not like she was purely in love with this guy as an idea. I think she absolutely would have been thrilled if at 25 she had found him again and could have had a relationship with him. But also he is emblematic of like the ability to tap into a sense of longing, of deep emotion, of pathos, the ability to connect with this man in such a brief encounter and hold that with her for so long. And so many of the great movie stars, when people discuss like what are their, like what is the quality that makes them so poignant and lasting, it's that there's some sense of like something that can't quite be expressed. As much as great movie stars are great communicators, it's usually the thing that pushes people from actor to star is usually some inexplicable, like there's something they're holding back. There's some sense of longing. There's something they're reaching for that they can't quite grab. And this is just like a very smart literalization of the type of like incident as a child, the kind of memory you could hold on to, the sort of like constant grasping for a thing that you're never going to get to. Which is, I mean, really what the whole thing's about, right?
Yep, 100%.
Some of our greatest films are just centered around yearning.
Yes.
And conflict itself is based around searching for something that you don't have.
Resolution.
Actors say, what's my motivation? What's my want in this scene? You know? And it's like,
David's rubbing my fingers together.
Mucho dinero.
Money. Yes.
But if you're someone who either is born with or experiences some set of conditions that gives you that innate, unbreakable sense of yearning in your life, then it's like you're always going to be kind of compelling on screen if that's being captured, right? Like if she hadn't met this guy, she would have willed into existence another thing like this.
Yes.
She would have had some experience like this that became her white whale.
So this experience she has, where she sort of meets a sort of revolutionary man, he leaves behind a magic key, and he had a painting, and he is maybe on a train eventually, and she's chasing after the train. Is he actually on the train?
Well, at that point, we're seeing the movie as well.
But the servant who tells her that he escaped after the police found that he was hiding in their shed, he says, he made it to the train station.
What I love about the train sequence is it is so magisterial, and it's like many a film and television show we would know. The train goodbye, the best kind of goodbye.
Yeah.
Way better than plane goodbye, by the way.
So hard to run after them.
Yes. Although movies have tried that.
Movies have tried.
Liar, Liar, where he drives the stair car.
Yeah.
I mean, the best you can do is two guys running in a playing field like in Heat.
That's the good version of it. But also, I love that the cameraman and the other guy are running after her, and they're like, this is exhausting.
Yes.
Like the idea of like, not just are you being transposed into her world, you have to like follow her through her world. And it's tiring. Like,
well, and then later when he's in the samurai outfit and he has to call out, like, I know it isn't era appropriate. Like he's trying to integrate himself into her memories and knowing that it's a struggle. He's not quite getting there.
But also having the best fandom dream come true by getting to play out the roles opposite his favorite actress ever.
Which also just makes it then so emotionally impactful to me when you start to recognize like, oh, that's him. He exists as a younger form in this story. He's now gotten to the point where he enters the narrative and he's like watching himself, watching the things that he witnessed with the new sense of context.
There's a really interesting moment in the later scene after he gets introduced as the younger version of himself who's in her life. As they're searching for the key at one point when it gets lost while they're filming, he like brushes past himself and knocks himself over, which is so interesting. It's so cool.
Yeah.
So much going on in this movie.
Because there's also the stuff where they're shown in her home and they're acting it out.
on the stage, but there's also no one there. There's no crew.
Yeah. And so that's another sort of like almost the other mirror of that.
Yeah. There's always lenses upon lenses upon lenses of looking at this woman's life and career.
You have this whole period film that she's in where she's on the boat. There's this sort of villainess with the cool glasses who's trying to stop her from reuniting with her love.
Yes.
At this point, we're sort of seeing
Ida. Is that Ida?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll see the film like stop down.
Or no. I'm sorry. That's Shimao.
Eiko Shimao. Yeah.
Eiko Shimao.
The Betty Davis.
Exactly.
Yes.
She's right. She's a villain in the movie, and then they cut to like, or the lights will appear, and the director is giving her directions, and the actress is like, she can't handle this role. Like it's like there's two layers of villainy at work here.
There's an All About Eve story going on here too.
Well, and then you have this like manifestation of a witch that's sort of like hovering over her life. That is like a character in film she's done, but also seems to be haunting her. And whether she is one and the same with Shimao or is like a reflection of herself as an older woman.
Yeah, because at the end we see her see that reflection for the final time, but then she's like, is that me? And it kind of morphs together.
Yes, she has the mole on the face. But it's like this very honest reflection of, even if you're like a child actress plucked from a very young age, you're being placed into an industry where it's like, oh, and by the way, the road tends to end for actresses here.
Yeah.
Like your clock is ticking almost
Youth is
immediately.
an asset.
Yes. So here's a woman who's like an adult and seems to be in the prime of her life and is so mortally jealous of this young child. And she's also terrified of getting to that point in her life.
Absolutely. Big train crash sequence, right? Is that, and then that merges into a like true period film. There's a name for it. Doing my best here. The Jidegeki, is that how you say it? I don't know. Like the sort of, do you know Hoai-Tran?
Jidegeki,
yeah, like the sort of like
the samurai
type. Edo period, right? Samurai, period costume. She's got the the painted eyebrows, all that. Like that is the most drastic transition between the sort of, like 1930s movie or whatever and this like 17th century movie, whatever it is, where she like everything's on fire and she's about to kill herself.
I mean, so interesting to me as someone who is only casually familiar with Japanese film history that I even now see like the things I recognize, like the Jidegeki films feel to me very much like Akira Kurosawa films. And then when we get to later with contemporary films, Ozu films, that kind of thing. And then, of course, the kaiju films, which we'll talk about soon.
Which is obviously, I thank you, Satoshi Kon, for including that in this. It was very fun to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, this feels, there's the ghostly lady. This feels like thrown about a little bit. I think that was one of the inspirations that he used. But the ghostly like Rumpelstiltskin lady with the big loom.
Yes.
She's cool.
Who tricks her into drinking the tea. It's so interesting, the scenes that we see that she's filming, they feel so important and pivotal to her own life because it feels like, the tea that she's doomed to drink is also dooming her to never get over this love that has defined her for so long.
Right.
But once again, it's like, to some degree, I mean, the final line of the film.
You spoiled it?
I spoiled it. Gives her the sort of narrative agency of she was not a victim of circumstance, right? This idea that this truth was held from her for so long out of the fear of like, this would destroy her. If she knew the man she had been chasing was long dead already. And for her, it's like she has this ownership of like, the chase was always the thing I was going to be in love with.
Yes.
Yeah.
The resolution won't be nearly as good as the chase. And that's why making the movies is better than real life, right?
Yes.
That's why escapism of movies is better than real life.
That everything that's like haunting her is also something to some degree she's bringing upon herself as trying to like conjure the energy to fucking act, to feel shit.
But what if someone told you a story about the movies they were in and then you were in the movies and then you almost died making the movie that is a memory?
Okay, so I want to say this now.
That sounds awesome, honestly.
I know.
I would
Isn't
love
that crazy? Like if every time I have to profile an actor, they're like, well, if you'll remember, and then suddenly I'm in the movie with them and I might
you're
die.
in feudal Japan and you're getting attacked by bandits.
I want to say this now, and I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that I wish it had happened. or want it to happen. But rewatching this, it is astounding Hollywood has not tried to remake this movie.
Interesting.
It feels like such an obvious...
As an animated film?
As a
no,
live-action
as a
film.
live-action film.
As a live-action film.
Being Julia. Bam.
Well, they nailed it.
I mean, I think that the closest equivalent is Damien Chazelle's Babylon, which is more of a love letter to movies than to a specific actress.
I think, like... Your Name, which Hollywood was trying to remake in live action for like 10 years and finally seems to have given up on.
Yeah.
And part of the struggle was that they were like, we cannot figure out how to culturally transpose this thing. It is so specific to Japanese history. And they were trying to do it with Indigenous Americans and it never totally worked. It went through different directors. This movie you could transpose in live action.
Sure.
Onto American film history.
Yeah.
Sure.
With the exact same narrative structure, and the documentary filmmakers are entering the narrative and all of this. I'm not saying I want it to happen.
Yeah.
But I just like cynically, you're like, there aren't two actresses who are like desperately clawing for the rights to this movie to set it up, to remake it themselves as like a star vehicle, as the two ages.
I wonder if the relative anonymity of Satoshi Kon has helped that because, it's
not like
it's not even one of his most well-known films.
Also, would it depict the Civil War?
Well,
this is not a thing we maybe want to go back to.
You don't want to go back?
Be a Northerner.
Huh? Yeah, exactly.
Fall in love with a Northerner.
Okay.
I'm just
You
saying.
think in Your Name they couldn't figure out how to like do the thing where you make the sake out of like the virgin spit?
That was the thing they couldn't crack.
That was the one thing.
Everything else
like, I can't find an analog
the weird
for
cosmic
this.
love story, they could crack, but not the spit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like the spit is kind of pivotal in Your Name. They got to make the chair movie in America. That's what I want.
Suzume?
Yeah.
Suzume, where they have
hot chair.
the hot chair.
Yeah.
He is hot, and he's also a kung fu kicking chair.
I love that chair.
A three-legged kung fu kicking chair. We did our award show episode, Hoai-Tran, and I like we'll take notes throughout the year of like what my picks would be and what would be funny awards to give out. And the one I fucking forgot to read was most handsome chair.
There was fierce competition.
He is very handsome.
He is, and he's handsome in chair form.
As good as Millennium Actress is, at no point 10 minutes into the movie does anyone turn into a chair and then not turn back into a person.
It is the only note I have for this one. It's the only thing I would hold against it.
I think we could have used a talking kung fu fighting chair.
Every movie could.
I probably talked about just the growing realization where I'm like, okay, he's going to be a chair for a bit. He's still a chair.
He's going to be a chair the whole time.
Like, I've seen this guy's movies. He might have the guy be a chair the whole time, even though he was hot.
And also, that isn't like the main thrust of this movie. It's not primarily a chair transformation.
It's about natural disasters and climate change.
As a chair.
And instead, it's about this guy in a chair. The
guy's just kind of going on his chair journey to the side of the main story.
Yeah, they're chasing after a cat who cursed them to be a chair.
That movie rules so hard.
Is he working on something new? Do we know?
I hope so.
What he's up to?
Shinkai.
But those are films that would be impossible to localize, to adapt, to remake. And obviously other filmmakers have pulled elements of Satoshi Kon's work.
Yeah.
It just feels like this is a movie that you could remake, and the changes you would have to make mapping it onto American culture would make it different enough that it's almost a worthwhile effort. I
agree with you to an extent, because I think now more than ever, it's actually more possible to make this kind of film, even in like Satoshi Kon's style. I think of Everything Everywhere All at Once, which the Daniels have cited Satoshi Kon as inspiration and influence in the way that they edited and like the rapid fire editing and framing and blocking of their films. Right. And that's the closest I've seen in live action to Satoshi Kon being made real. There's an understanding of the language, and there's a democratization of the technology that would make it easy enough to replicate these kinds of transitions. I'm just like, I think this is the best version of this movie that could ever be made. Mm-hmm. I'm not advocating for someone to make another version, but I'm just like, this thing is so fucking poignant. And part of it is it's just poking a lot of the bruises of my favorite types of stories, where I'm like, I love shifting between reality and memory and fantasy. You love yearning. I love yearning. I love movies about like the complicated history of movies and our relationship to them. I like any movie that's basically someone about to die trying to make sense of their entire life in a final moment, especially if they're like dumping it all into another person who's overwhelmed. That like always gets me. And the fact that this movie's able to do all of that in 88 minutes is astonishing.
I'm pulling a Bridges in Madison County.
Go on.
I'm dying and I'm putting it in one suitcase for them to find. Like
you're doing
like,
you're not going to
Dad
bring
was
over.
so boring. He never did anything. It was like, nope. I had one emotional affair. It's in the suitcase.
It's
It was a weekend.
But,
one good weekend.
But you lost the key, and it'll never be found.
Yeah. That'd be funny if they like try to open it and they're like, it's stuck. Forget it.
These are
burn the suitcase.
Those are real opposite ends of metaphor. Someone gives you a key and you hold on to it forever for the rest of your life, and when you lose it, you chase after it. Versus Clint taking everything, putting it in the suitcase, and being like, I don't know, it's in the basement. I never want to look at that again.
It would be funny if they went and found Clint in that movie and he's just like lives in a tree. He's like 1,000 years old.
Okay, what if you make Millennium Actor with Clint?
Oh, fuck. That sounds good.
Interesting.
I mean, that does happen. This is why you can't do it live action. Who plays Clint?
I'm saying Clint plays...
Not Scott Eastwood, because he...
Oh, who plays young Clint? Fuck.
I mean, like, that's the advantage of animation.
We backed into the issue is...
Right, is that you can move her back.
We don't get away from Scott.
Yeah.
No, well, now what someone would do would be like, what do you mean? AI, I'll clean Clint right up.
No.
He'll be as young as new. Go right to rawhide with him.
But it's the cynical part of me that's like, isn't there some sort of like Winslet Dench Iris casting where it's just like, just two great actresses?
Sure, that sounds fun.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. The other problem with the Clint movies, they'd be like, "Oh, tell us about this movie," and he's like, "Too late. We already wrapped. I shot it in 12 minutes.
I barely remember that.
That film is actually fast forwarded.
The take was done before we even started.
Also, it would just be him telling the documentary guys that they railroaded him.
Although maybe you would have a talking chair in that because
he likes to talk to chairs. Show him Suzume.
So is that the one Clint needs to remake?
I like this kid. Clint, that's a chair. He's got the face of an
going
old
into production on my 95th film, a live-action remake of Suzume. I love these warm
I'm
portals.
the chair.
I play the chair.
You just like Clint walking around IKEA being like, I'm looking for my star. He's here somewhere.
Or 1517 style, he just casts the chair he's sitting on at that moment.
He's got a great face.
Why look further?
I knew it. It truly is.
Right?
God, if they only let him do that
Why go
once.
to IKEA when we have chair at home?
Like, truly, probably Richard Jewell, he was like, and we'll just cast the real, he died. And he's like, God damn it. Now I have to do auditions. I'm furious. They railroaded me into making this movie.
They railroaded me.
Why didn't anyone tell me he was dead? Clint. Okay, so what are some of the other movies? There's this sort of...
the booklet here has the full fictional filmography.
There you go.
Which is cool. So it's Heroism of the Wounded Soldier. I'm reading the American titles. It has both. Yearning for You, Castle of Phantoms, Scarlet Glory. They're good titles.
Very good titles.
Shiyoko's 7 Ninja Transformations, Shimbara Pure Love, The Song of Snow, Extraordinary Black Tengu, Encounters, The Madonna of Tokyo, Schoolhouse in Spring, Midsummer Horizon, The Garden of Women, House of Fossils.
Okay, this is definitely more movies than I clocked in the movie.
Some of these make brief appearances.
Sure.
Giglia.
That was her Giglia.
Is the Godzilla. Yeah.
Right.
The Truck General, Chapter of the Race on the Noble Highway.
Right. That was for kids.
Planet Z is her final film.
I have to say, I love that Shiyoko was never limited to the prestige films. Like she was doing kaiju movies. Like when that Godzilla type rolls up and it's just a dragon, I was like, this is great. But she's doing sequels to her samurai film where she's basically just like Bandit now, and it's like definitely a direct-to-video B-movie sequel where they're like, what if you were showing off your legs?
Right.
But that's like...
that's right. It's like, I think of Setsuko Hara from the like 3 Ozu movies I've seen her in.
Sure.
And she made like 100 movies.
Yes.
Like, I'm sure some of them were trash.
Well, that's like...
No offense.
No, but like someone like Lillian Gish who like starts young in silent films. And then you're like, because of when she was born, her career spans like the entire arc of film figuring out what it is, where it's like, oh, and then she's going to get to like talking Westerns,
right.
And she's going to do like later old lady noir parts and all these sorts of things. It's sort of like being alive the years this character was alive, you couldn't be pretentious about your career because the industry is like rebuilding itself and reshaping itself every
and the country is literally rebuilding itself too.
So like if you survive, if you continue working across decades, you're gonna make every type of film.
Yeah. We eventually do cut back to the movie from the start of the movie where she's like wandering a ruined landscape post-war, one assumes, like a sort of bombed out landscape.
I do like the line from the filmmaker guy who, when they get to the right before her hometown gets bombed, he says, "Is this a sci-fi movie?" And no, it's reality.
Yeah. But also, like Japanese cinema had decades of processing that reality through genre.
Right. And the horrors of the real life war felt so absurd that they feel like a sci-fi
But they
film.
had to turn into monsters. Yeah.
But he is putting both sides of the coin out because he, the man she falls in love with is a dissident opposing the Japanese invasion of China.
Yeah.
The sort of like pre-war, kind of imperialism of Japan. Right. And then like the post-war trauma of like it's so funny that in the interviews he's like, I don't know, I just sort of had like an idea about an actress.
Yes, this is what I'm saying.
And then it's such a dense, complicated film.
Right. It's like astonishing that it feels like he kind of landed on this by accident, but had the rigor to be like, if I'm going to tell this, I need to now do the work and fucking study this well enough to be able to paint it properly.
Right.
Yeah.
Good for him. He did it.
He's a great fucking filmmaker.
Yeah.
This movie's so...
It's so good. Masterpiece.
Yeah, it is.
Have we talked about Tachibana, the character who keeps showing up and saving her?
The ghosty lady?
No, he is...
Genya.
Yeah.
Okay.
The guy.
It's the younger version of the
where he can't
documentary
help
filmmaker.
but insert himself, right, and be her savior.
It's like, it's not actually him.
It is him.
In every single occurrence.
Oh,
though.
Sure.
There's always a character type.
There's always like this
Yes.
character type that's recurring.
Yes. The sort of kindness of strangers, people.
Right. I mean, I think it's interesting that she's always playing a very specific type of role. The woman who is pure of heart, but also has a little bit of fire and spark in her, but also has that such purity of spirit that men will like immediately jump in to save her.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, in a way, it gets to this sort of conservative idea of women and like the purity of women.
The Madonna and the horror thing.
Exactly.
Right.
That I think that a lot of Miyazaki films actually get into too, like the sort of purity of spirit. And that is something that kind of drives her roles as well as like her fans who feel like they have to protect her and feel like
she's
that
like someone right who's like ruled by this unrequited love.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's forever sort of I mean
ensconced in that purity.
Yes. Shimao ends up taking her key.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like funny how quickly the movie sort of breezes over this, but it's like the key is stolen. It feels like she sort of loses her drive to work in the same degree. She ends up marrying this director sort of set up by an executive, and her career starts to like
flatten out,
slow down.
She becomes a housewife, but then maybe she's just playing housewives.
Yeah, right.
But you see the posters of her throughout the movie, and there's this poster of her as like a nice middle-aged lady, and you do get the vibe of like, right, she's making less thrilling films. You see this confrontation with like a mother-in-law where she's basically like, a woman's happiness is making a nice home.
Yeah.
Oh, that was an interesting scene because we see that scene playing out first between her and her actual mother, and then it cuts and it's actually Shimao, the lady, the actress who has always been sort of her antagonist.
Her Bette Midler. Right.
Yes, her Bette Midler. And I love that scene. It's another one of like those effortlessly cut scenes that you're like, oh yeah, we're still in this. I find it interesting the reaction that Genya, the filmmaker, always has against the director that Chiyoko marries. It's a kind of, I wonder if it stems from that protectiveness he feels as a fan, where he is just like any man who is exploiting the woman I love is always going to be evil. But I don't know why, but for a long time, and this is from my like first or early watches of it, I thought that he had abused her, and I had like had that idea in my head.
That's
and then
like an undercurrent.
Exactly. And then when I watched it again, I was just like, oh, I guess he didn't. But I always had that sort of feeling.
Yeah. I guess in his mind, it's more just like he domesticated her.
Right. He took advantage of her in a way.
Right.
Yes. And he was older than her too when they first met. So there was definitely that degree of like power imbalance.
Yeah. But to this guy, it's almost like there is a form of abuse in not allowing her to continue as an artist at the scale. If your relationship to her is one-sided mirror, I'm in love with her work. I think she's incredible. I stand here and set off to the sides and watch her work and try to help her. And suddenly there's some shift now where her career is throttling down. You would hate that guy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right? In the way
if I'm a super fan?
Insane modern fandom will get upset.
Like if
about
Colin
who
Farrell
blank
got
is
married
dating.
tomorrow?
And stopped acting?
Yeah. I would
You'd be
hate that
furious.
person.
Yeah. People burning their Ana de Armas cardboard cutouts.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
That kind of thing. But there's this
What's
pileup
Anna up
of
to?
you have that whole sort of moment, the transition between her conversation with her mother and Shimao, the key going missing, Genya saving her life, I guess happens a little bit later. But that whole like marriage happens very quickly. I mean, the movie sort of treats it like she just has this kind of like lost 10 years.
Yeah.
Where she's trying to play house and doing less engaging work. And then how does she ultimately find the key again? She finds it in his office, right?
Yeah, because you have her basically breaking down as both a young married woman and as an old woman. And then she's cleaning his office one day and she just finds it.
Yes. And then we have that scene where it turns out they're having this confrontation on a set.
Yes.
Which is very interesting for
right,
no
you
audience.
see the lights go out
behind
them, which is very cool. And the rival.
But it's like
there.
they literally took her artistic yearning and put it in a box and said, "Don't worry about this."
Right.
And then she sort of got the spark again. She found it again, and
she
then
made Planet Z, which I want to see.
It looks fucking rad as hell.
Looks awesome. It's a moon invasion movie, I want to say.
I'm just saying, if tomorrow someone was like, "I'm making a movie called Planet Z," I would be interested.
Don't worry, I'm on it. It'll be done tomorrow.
Clint, wait, no, take a little time with this one, Clint.
I'm taking a chair to the moon.
Clint in his chair, going to the moon.
Clint, you can slow down on this one,
No, I'm
please.
going faster.
Like, I assume he took a minute to make Space Cowboys, right? Yeah, maybe not. The movie doesn't have the
one
vibe.
minute.
Yeah.
It is so funny the couple of times like that and Hereafter where he's made movies with like a ton of CGI.
Right. Yeah.
Where they have to like fucking projection map Donald Sutherland's face onto a CGI astronaut suit, and you're like, did he even look at?
No. He's like, it's already done.
No way. He was like,
I trust it. Just print.
Yeah, you can
print.
Do that.
Go, Clint.
part.
That's a storyboard. Print it.
Where's the print button? Now we're making younger Clint into just like a senile Joe Biden parody.
Well, that's the Millennium Actress way.
I'm done painting the wagon.
I think I've already
Clint.
said this, but he should make a movie about Joe Biden getting railroaded for being too old. I know it's probably not in his politics. I just think what's happening to Biden would probably resonate with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Oh, just because he's a million years old.
I can wake up with the best of them.
I
get out of bed every day.
Good for him.
He probably doesn't direct from a chair like Scorsese does.
True.
Scorsese really did look like he was about to like turn into an enchanted sleeping frog at the Oscars.
He looked very old.
Oh, sorry. It was Ridley Scott who directs from a chair. Then he naps between takes.
Oh, does he?
Yes.
Is that Scott's take?
I think so.
Oh, I bet he wakes up from those naps grouchy.
Yes. Because that's how he films so fast, is that he directs from a chair that he naps on.
That's great. Chair and bed.
My experience, I was on the Vinyl pilot, the worst thing Scorsese ever directed. Right. My experience
and that's like 10 years ago at this point almost. Well, 8.
Yeah, and still far and away the worst thing he's ever done.
No, I'm just saying he was a little more spry.
Yes, no, he was. But he's early 70s at that point.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
That he like has his video village and they would literally like construct like a pillow fort around it.
Oh.
So sometimes it was like cardboard boxes taped together. Sometimes depending on where we were filming, they would literally like take pillows and put it around him or like chairs or whatever it was. But he's like sort of closed off. They kept on saying it was because, and I believe this, his asthma is so bad and that show was just lousy with people fake smoking that he couldn't be on set that often. And so it was like you do like 3 to 5 takes and his first AD would come out and just be like, he's happy, keep doing it.
Right.
And then after like 5 takes, the door would open, the cardboard door. And Marty would like storm out looking like the man from Up.
I'm guessing like amid a plume of smoke.
Basically,
they'd parts ways.
They'd bring out a giant like fan like pipe
to
blow the smoke out of there, and then he'd come out and give like a bunch of notes for 5 minutes, and then go like, and then keep going, go do the other thing. But most of the time, he was like sitting in his little fort.
Ari Aster just announced his new movie.
The Western?
Yeah, Eddington. Wow.
Did they announce the cast?
Joaquin.
Okay.
Pedro.
Okay.
Emma Stone.
Okay.
Luke Grimes.
Okay.
Austin Butler.
Wow.
Michael Ward from Empire of Light and stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Clifton Collins Jr.
Wow, it's like
cast.
It's like he was like cast everyone who everyone was talking about this year.
Nab and Butler is kind of a big thing at this point. Because right now with Butler, it's kind of like, when does that guy roll snake eyes? Like, he is just like hitting.
That's a good way of putting it.
Because after Dune, he has Bike Riders, where he is taking the baton.
David's got feelings on Bike Riders.
I forgot about Bike Riders. I mean, he's not bad in it or anything. Have you seen Bike Riders?
I haven't seen it, but I do know that he's doing a weird voice.
He's certainly
and
doing
he's
a
taking
voice.
the baton from the king of weird voices, Tom Hardy himself.
Tom H. It's true. What if that's the Millennium Actress you make, Tom Hardy?
Oh,
he could
so many weird voices.
Play the actor throughout the centuries or the decades because he would just do a different weird voice.
He would. He would.
He'd be great.
But then who's old Tom?
Tom. Obviously.
Tom in old age makeup.
Tom in old age.
He plays it all.
He would do it.
You think he would let anyone else do that? He would love it.
I'm so old.
My bones.
My bones. Yeah.
He does his Bane voice again for old age Tom.
I'm so old.
Yes.
What's he doing? He's doing fucking Venom.
But it is weird that he's kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that, obviously, but I would like him to do some other stuff.
I like that the franchise he's stuck in is at least one that's totally based around his personality and performance. It's not like he's doing like kind of clocking in, clocking out work.
Yeah.
But it is weird how much his output slowed down.
He did a lot. I guess it's hard to keep that up.
He also like fucked up his legs.
Because he did the symbiote.
Because he wore weird boots on Venom. I'm telling you. Yeah, and not even like, when he was doing mocap or whatever. He was like, I saw these boots. I thought they looked cool. I wore them. They fucked up my legs.
What kind of boots were these?
I don't know.
Are these torture boots?
He wore them inside out.
I think he's like had a lot of like surgeries in between the Venom movies for these fucking boots.
A lot of surgeries?
I'm not kidding you.
Did he have surgery so he could fit into the boots better?
He needed
I love these boots so much.
2 knee surgeries.
Thank you.
After making Venom 1.
Yeah.
But that was because Richard Fleischer kept kicking him in the knees. Not Fleischer, what's his name? Ruben Fleischer.
Yeah.
There you go. My knees were fucked. My knees were fucked.
Yeah, I'm not going to try it.
Your knees were born in the darkness, whatever he says.
Yeah.
I should watch that again.
Yeah, they should bring Bane back. What if James Gunn announced Phase 2, Bane?
Bane. Just the
What
Bane.
if Nolan
Tom
was
Hardy's
like,
Bane.
Now that I have my Oscar, I'm making a Batman movie. Is Batman in it? No.
Yeah.
Just Bane.
Here, this is a good question.
It's Bane going shopping.
Chaos of DC film slate. Everyone trying to let James Gunn give him the time and space to. I saw that. They just pushed it back again. Yeah. Everyone trying to give James Gunn the time and space to actually try to build this thing properly. If Christopher Nolan walks into Warner Brothers holding his Oscars, slams them down, and goes, Bane movie, can anyone say no to him?
No, of course not.
He's got that blank check now.
He does. He has the blankest of blank checks.
I saw someone say there was some like tweet from like an anonymous.
You could make a movie called like My Dick. Like it's like, what's it about?
He's gonna make
about my dick.
A MacGruber movie because that's his favorite movie.
That would be fun.
Would be great.
MacGruber Talladega Nights crossover.
Some film executive who was anonymous source quoted on Twitter by some entertainment journalist the other day said it is arguable that Christopher Nolan is the biggest movie star in the world right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's an evocative thing to think about.
Yeah, it's interesting.
There's an argument.
But he's going to make something probably weird next. Maybe not. Maybe he'll do the opposite and make like a super genre-y, silly thing.
But what's wild is that Tenet and Oppenheimer both feel like movies you only get made after you've just won Best Picture.
Right.
Yes. And he won Best Picture for one of them.
Right. One of them's really silly. One of them's very serious. Both of them feel like I guess we can't tell you what to do movies.
Right. I want to rewatch Tenet.
It's just impossible to predict
rewatched
what he's
it recently
do
on the big screen.
Yeah.
They had that re-release on IMAX. It was amazing. It rocked hard.
It's so cool when
it's great, even when you zone out, because sometimes you might zone out during it.
It's great to zone out in Tenet. That makes it better.
But even when you zone out, then you're like, you come back in and the coolest thing ever is happening on screen.
But you're also like, what's going on? And you're like, that's part of the fun.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know what's happening. Exactly.
Anyway, the perfect Millennium Actress world premiere.
The soldier comes back, reveals.
Oh, okay, you want to wrap. Okay,
right. Yeah. She goes off and runs out after her. let me get this the timing of this right, because basically later, once she's in the hospital, Jenya relays to the cameraman that he had the remainder of the conversation with the soldier that she didn't hear, that he killed him.
Yes.
Yes, that he was tortured and killed after his arrest.
The man with the scar on his face, who would appear in some of her movies too, as sort of like the vision that she had of that she was always running from in a way.
He's in confessing this, he's trying to like atone or whatever. He's like, I'm sorry that I did this.
But she doesn't hear the full confession. She
only confesses to Jenya.
Then there is a literal earthquake. She is hospitalized. The real, we're back in the present day. She's on her hospital bed, and Jenya's like, "You're gonna do great. You're about to pull through. This is great. You're fit as a fiddle." And that's when she's like, "Nah, bro. It was all about the chase. Peace."
Yeah.
Right? I mean, basically.
Like, incredible final line.
Yeah. And also, she says, "I'll chase him in heaven, too," which is just like she's going to continue the chase.
I have
it's
the
not
key.
even about finding him.
That key's going to work in heaven.
Yeah.
The afterlife. Yeah.
Sure.
Sequel to Millennium Actress. Chiyoko through the, 7 circles of hell, 9 circles of hell, finding her man.
Yeah, she's like in heaven, and then she's like, "No, I must depart."
Yeah, but here's the problem. The real sequel of Millennium Actress would probably be called Zoomer Influencer.
On TikTok. Jeez, I hope they ban it soon.
Zoomer Influencer, Ben.
It's so funny how old, crusty weirdos in Congress right now are trying to ban TikTok, and me and people I know are like, I hope they do. I'd love it to be banned. Ban that fucking thing. Just for my personal mental health. Anyway, Millennium Actress World Premiere was at Fantasia International Film Festival in 2001. Released in Japan September 14th, 2002. And then...
American release doesn't happen until...
What's that?
What's
fishing line? I got a bite.
They went fishing.
Yes, Go Fish.
They
was
be
the
going
first
fishing.
film distributed by Go Fish, as we said. Rumors circulated they asked him to recut the film for American audiences. He says this was never the case. He didn't love how they handled the
poster's the one with her sort of
release.
Standing with the sword surrounded by the photos.
It looks a little more like it's sort of evoking like sort of House of Flying Daggers. Well, that hasn't even come out yet, but like Crouching Tiger, I guess, but not really. It's still a fine poster.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's just not as cool as the original poster, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Kon didn't like it. He said it sabotaged the culture of the film. To put it bluntly, what the hell? Samuel Goldwyn Pictures, as you said, Griffin, for some insane reason, decided to rush Tokyo Godfathers into theaters just 3 months later.
After, because this is coming out, and this was kind of de rigueur at the time, that Japanese films are coming out in the States only like a couple years after.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like Hero was nominated for Best Foreign Film 2 years before it was actually released in theaters and shit like that.
Well, that was because of Weinstein.
Right.
But yes, correct.
Samuel Goldwyn was like, we got to get this thing out now.
Yep.
So he has 2 movies come out in America within 2 months of each other, even though they had been made and released years apart.
Film was well received, only grossed $37,000 in America though, but got good reviews.
Barely a chum scrubber.
Yeah, it didn't even.
They didn't even crack the chum.
It didn't even scrub
but
the chum.
we can look at the release date for the box office game, Griffin, which is September 12th, 2003.
Okay.
Now, Millennium Actress is opening number 75 in 1 theater. No, I'm sorry, 6 theaters.
Tough to make the 75.
Right in between the 10th weekend of the highly underrated Tim Fywell drama I Capture the Castle.
Oh, good movie. Yeah.
And a film I've never heard of called 30 Years to Life.
Nope.
Don't know it. Looks like it's an ensemble comedy.
Oh.
Love those. With Erica Alexander.
Okay.
Number one of the
30 Years to Life, a joke where it's like it sounds like a prison sentence, but the movie is about marriage.
Oh my God.
That old chain and ball.
That's the real.
Number 1. There are 3 films, new films at the top 3 this week.
Okay.
Griff.
Okay.
Number 1, it's a sequel.
September 2003.
Correct.
Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Look at that.
Okay.
Wow.
Johnny Depp, Salma Hayek, Antonio Banderas, Robert Rodriguez is Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Coming out like 6 weeks after Pirates of the Caribbean, where they were like pushed the
coasting
Depp
on that
so hard.
Depp is very funny in it.
He is.
But he is a supporting character.
Yes.
But he is kind of mostly what I remember about the movie, I will say. I have not seen the film
the
in
fun
21
part of the
years.
movie.
Yes. I remember, being a bit of a slog. But that's all three of those movies are so fun for 20 minutes. And then you're kind of like, okay, I get it.
Right.
Yeah.
If Topher Grace could cut the mariachi trilogy, Star Wars prequel style, into one film, it would probably rule.
The problem is you'd have to ask Topher Grace.
You gotta ask Topher. Yeah. And no one knows where to find that guy.
1-800-TOPHER.
Okay.
Topher.grace@gmail.com.
He's currently cutting Denis Villeneuve's Dune movies together.
Yeah, he's making a 48-minute
Denis was wrong. And I'll show you why.
Have you seen Once Upon a Time in Mexico?
I have not.
Yeah,
that's one I missed. I have seen clips of Antonio Banderas looking extremely hot. Him and Salma looking the hottest together.
Salma's also barely in that movie. She's above the title, huge on the poster. The movie starts and they're like, she's been dead for 10 years.
Yeah, where she's missing or whatever.
Flashbacks.
Yeah, there's a big flashback sequence.
Yeah.
You're right, though. She was busy.
She was busy.
Making Frida or something.
Sure. Making something.
Number 2 is also new this week. An underrated film from a director we recently mentioned in the last half hour or so.
Interesting. In a positive or negative way?
We were talking about his directing style and how he sits.
It's a Ridley movie.
Ridley Scott film.
September 2003.
Yes. I saw this in theaters and enjoyed it. Matchstick Man.
Good movie.
Nick Cage.
Great Cage.
Sam Rockwell.
Great Rockwell.
Allison Lohman.
Maybe Bess Lohman?
Probably.
Yeah.
Underrated Cage performance in that one.
Yeah, he's really fun in that movie. There's a big twist.
Several. I guess there's one major. Yeah.
Bruce McGill's in it.
Bruce McGill.
What do you
rules
want?
in it. Yeah.
Pigs.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Your medicine. Number 3 at the box office. It's a horror film.
Okay.
I believe it's a debut.
You think it's a debut?
A debut.
Okay.
For a frequent director in this genre. Huh. It is his debut.
Huh.
And he's not annoying.
You find him not annoying?
No, honestly, I actually find
you were saying it sarcastically.
Somewhat charming. Okay. Actually, in interviews.
But you find his movies annoying?
They can be annoying. He's got a bit of an annoying thing going on.
Is it a torture porny thing?
He would dabble in that. This movie, not so much.
This isn't Cabin Fever, is it?
It is Cabin Fever. Well, yeah. Eli Roth's Cabin Fever, which that's not torture porny. It's
no. But then I feel like Hostel is
interesting.
Whatever
you don't find him annoying.
The thing about him is I do find him annoying.
Yeah.
But then sometimes he will talk about the genre in nice ways sometimes.
Every time I start engaging with Eli Roth, I'm like, I find this guy annoying, right? And then by the end of the engagement, I'm like, why am I so tough on him? And then I loop all the way back around to annoying. It resets. Like, I was like, I kind of like Thanksgiving.
I like Thanksgiving.
If you ask me what I think of the guy at this moment, I'm like, kind of annoying. Right?
Yeah.
I liked
Did you like Thanksgiving?
It's in cycles.
Did you like Thanksgiving?
I did not see Thanksgiving because I find Eli Roth annoying.
I do too.
He put a house with a clock in its walls.
He put it inside the walls.
That's true. The house has a clock in its walls.
That's right. He's also, I think he became for me one of those guys where I was like, can you make a movie rather than like talking to me or like being in other movies?
It definitely felt like there was a disproportionate balance of how much people were telling me this guy's an important filmmaker versus how infrequently he seemed to make movies.
Right. He made like Cabin Fever, Hostel Part 2. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Then he doesn't make a movie for 6 years.
Right.
And then when he does this, The Green Inferno, which stinks.
Right.
Then he makes Knock Knock, which I think kind of stinks.
Right. And
then he made Death Wish, which is way worse than those two movies. And then he put, I guess I should see The House with the Clock in its walls.
What if I was thinking the other day, I've been watching fucking Jack Black on Fallon playing the saxoboom, which is a clip I go to a lot.
That's the one that you can put on repeat whenever.
It's really good. But at the end of it, Jimmy Fallon comes out and goes, "The House with the Clock in its walls in theaters now." And so I just keep watching this clip that I find so funny and entertaining. And then I'm reminded, Jimmy Fallon yells at me about this movie I didn't see 8 years ago.
I should see it.
And I'm like, would I secretly love this?
I just remember when Richard Lawson tweeted at us, "The House with a Cock in its balls." And I've just never forgotten that.
Few movies have ever dared to put a cock in balls.
Number 4 at the box office.
The ghosts
Griffin.
are interesting.
It was number 1 the week before, opening to a robust, last week, $6 million.
Oh.
It has dropped only 24%. Good hold.
Good hold. So it's down to
$5 million.
That's strong, actually.
So it is a comedy.
It's a comedy
now,
that
Ben
opened
may
really
have seen
low.
this in
I think I know what
theaters.
this was. Because this was...
Now, you may not have, but you might have thought about it at least.
Can I just say what it is?
Yeah.
It's Dickie Roberts' former child star.
Starring David Spade.
There's the limited grouping of movies that, at least pre-COVID, where suddenly numbers went wackadoo in the slow reopening of theaters.
Yes.
Where it's like, what are the lowest number ones of all time?
Right.
What are the lowest number ones in recent memory? Right. And there was always this tier of like the second weekend of The Watcher, Dickie Roberts' child star, Bangkok Dangerous, movies that open to number one with $6 million.
Only we care about this.
We care about it so much.
Have you seen Dickie Roberts'
I
former
have
child
not.
star?
I've
Have you
not
heard
seen
of it?
Never even heard of it.
Well, it was a David Spade vehicle
but I
in
do
2003.
like David Spade, so I could appreciate where you're coming from. But no, that one totally.
I assume you have also not seen it.
I've not seen it,
beyond
but
me.
David Spade used to be in movies.
He did.
Where is
He
he?
used to be a proper movie star.
Where is he? He has a podcast where he and like Dana Carvey are like, remember SNL? And they're like, yeah, it was
Kind
great.
of.
you Tuesday you would write the sketches. Like it's literally like at this point I'm like, I could go to SNL and do the job just based. Well, I wouldn't be good at it, but I would know where to go.
I know where to
Little guide to working at SNL.
You're used to writing longhand. Yeah, I know you. You guys talk about this every fucking week.
But the other thing is, like, for so long, even though those guys like kind of barely overlapped on the show, ran in different circles on the show, they were just like, who are two SNL guys we can put together?
Got time on their hands.
Right. And
I guess it's a good source of passive income for them.
Totally. I think it might be primary income. But then they also were like having other SNL writers and cast members, and then it would extend to like hosts and producers on the show. And then someone was tweeting the other day about who they've had on as guests recently, and they're just fucking anybody now.
Oh, really?
They're people who have no connection to SNL.
Okay, so maybe I can do it.
Maybe.
I'll go on their pod. There's this
has never written for SNL but thinks he could. That's your title.
That's I'm like I could do it Tuesdays, right? That's when you stay up all night. So I'll be ready for that. And then dress is on beforehand, I know that.
I'm sorry, the most recent guest on Fly on the Wall was Ted Sarandos at time of recording.
Hey Ted, how you doing?
Yeah. But they did have a legendary SNL cast member, Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons went on it. I'm sure that.
So who do you think is
you can do these
ballot?
jokes now that you guys did. Anyway, 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag. Spade's in that. I watched it for Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Have you ever
just
seen
a
that
supporting
movie?
character.
It's another one I haven't seen.
One of Ben's
Yeah, these are
favorites.
movies you don't need to see.
It's not one of my favorites, okay? It's a movie I like.
Okay.
It stars Joe
Fair distinction.
Pesci.
The Pesh.
He has got to deliver 8 heads in a duffel bag. Hijinks ensue.
Easy.
Oh.
What could go wrong?
We love a good hijink.
Things go wrong, but in ways you wouldn't predict. Yes.
I believe as a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, what have you, I auditioned for Dickie Roberts' former child star.
Okay.
Because the premise of that movie
He's
is
a former child star
who never had a proper childhood, and he's trying to get a big role, and they think he didn't have a normal enough life to play the character, so he moves in with a family. So it's like him with 2 young children and a mom and a dad living in suburbia trying to learn how to be normal, I think is the premise of that movie. But the thing I remember when I auditioned was the stakes of the movie were he's got a big audition to play the key supporting character in the new Martin Scorsese movie starring Robert De Niro. And De Niro and Scorsese were written into the script.
Okay.
And I was like, they're getting Scorsese and De Niro? And they were like, we're hopeful.
And
the movie came out. It's Rob Reiner and Alec Baldwin.
Hell yeah.
And 03 Alec Baldwin.
Sure.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a new Rob Reiner movie. You're right.
Yeah.
Number 5 at the box office, just to wrap this up. It is a movie you've already referenced. It's the biggest hit of the summer.
Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl.
That's right.
Biggest movie this summer was Finding Nemo, not to be pedantic about it, but I think that was biggest, highest grossing live action picture, perhaps.
Pirates of the Caribbean, though, was the
culturally
surprise
seismic.
of the summer,
Yes.
culturally seismic.
Yes.
We're all dressing like Jack Sparrow.
And we're still playing the Pirates of the Caribbean score at the Oscars.
Yeah.
Apparently.
They played it after someone's win, right? They
Yes.
played it like at a weird time.
It was a very strange
They
time.
played it when like Dwayne Joy Randolph was leaving.
It is
Yeah.
so funny to think about with like, fuck, we don't have a score for the it's like their default. It's rousing. Skeletons are marching.
It's either that or I'm Just Ken. Also at strange moments during the ceremony.
They played I'm Just Ken after the guy who gave the speech about Ukraine.
Yes, that was
crazy.
it.
But they probably, you're right, they'll be playing I'm Just Ken for the next 20 years. They'll be doing versions of I'm Just Ken at the Oscars for 20 years.
Oh, yes.
You know who I don't envy? The people who have been locked inside a conference room for 5 years trying to solve the idea of how do we make another Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Woof.
So is it him? Does it have to be not him? Is it him in a smaller part? They seem to refuse the notion of maybe don't make another one.
That's definitely what they should do.
And they just keep banging their head against the wall and being like, does it have to be all Jack or no Jack or a little Jack?
You made two more with him. They were bad.
Yes.
So that doesn't really suggest to me that you've got a lot more, blood to get out of the Jack Sparrow stone.
Nope.
No.
And so then apart from that, it's like you have pirates and magic happens.
Yes.
That's not that compelling either.
No.
I don't know. That's whatever. We can talk about it off mic. But they need to figure out who's Johnny Depp now. And I'm like, I don't think you need to figure that out. Anyway, Disney's only making good movies, obviously.
Yeah, it's
and all the
perfect
decisions they make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Number 6 was Freaky Friday.
Great.
Surprise hit of the summer. Great movie. Number 7 was Jeepers Creepers 2. Nothing weird going on with that one.
Normal, legal.
Number 8 was Seabiscuit. I always forget that was a summer movie.
And a big hit.
Big hit. Made 120 mil. Number 9 is the greatest American film made in the 21st century.
Spy Kids 3D Game Over.
SWAT.
Okay.
Clark Johnson SWAT.
We have our different favorites from that summer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you seen SWAT?
I have seen SWAT. I remember watching it at the time, and that was at the height of dirtbag Colin Farrell.
Yeah. Yep.
He was so dirtbaggy in that movie.
No shirt, one dog.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. That it's just it's like Farrell and Jackson. You're like, oh, awesome. And Michelle Rodriguez and Ella Cool J, cool.
Yeah.
But then Brian Van Holt, Jeremy Renner, Josh Charles, Olivier Martinez, it has a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Reggie Cathy is the cop, is the boss.
Yeah.
Reggie Cathy yelling at you is so good in any film.
Incredible.
I have seen SWAT more times than I'd care to admit. I don't know why.
You should admit it right now.
Yes.
Admit it right. Your number. It's
David
high.
put it number 1 his Sight and Sound ballot.
It's an amazing movie.
No way, did you?
No, but it's an awesome movie.
But it's one of the movies you've seen most. Is that possible?
I just owned it on DVD and I've seen it so many times, and I was a huge Colin Farrell boy. And I love it.
What is the Olivier Martinez number that he shouts? $100
million. What a guy. It is funny you see that stack cast whoa, what villain were these guys up against? The fucking slut from Unfaithful. the hot Euro guy.
Halle Berry's third husband.
Was he married to Halle Berry?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's
for
a
a
sexy
while
couple.
after that, right off a SWAT.
I hope people painted them together. They're a very beautiful
He popped
couple.
off a SWAT right into her bed.
Damn. Jeez, Halle Berry is relieved her divorce from Olivia Martinez is settled.
I think they had a child together. Am I wrong about this?
Yes, they had a child.
They were a hot couple.
And number 10 at the box office, Griffin.
Okay.
Kevin Costner's Open Range.
Well, a movie we'll never talk about.
Thank you.
We won't have time to talk about it because Penny Marshall's confirmed as our next series. We don't have time. Penny's going to take a little while.
Running out of time.
Attention, attention. This is a spoiler alert for the 38-year-old film Jumpin' Jack Flash.
There's a whole scene in that movie where she just tries to remember the lyrics to the Rolling Stones song Jumpin' Jack Flash.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought the title, I assumed that's one of those movies where the title doesn't have to do with anything.
No, the title is that he's the secrets are buried in the lyrics to Jumpin' Jack Flash
that's
or whatever.
Insane.
It's a whole thing.
Wow.
Spoiler alert, it's Jonathan Pryce. You don't see him until the end of the movie, but he's the guy at the other end of the computer.
What?
Mm-hmm. He shows up and he gives her a big hug at the end. Wow, I just spoiled Jumpin' Jack Flash. You might want to put a Jumpin' Jack Flash spoiler warning.
Jonathan Pryce?
Yeah, Jonathan Pryce.
How random.
I was talking to someone who I think worked at Metrograph at the time, and our buddy Alex Ross Perry was doing a screening of Listen Up, Philip, or maybe it was at some rep theater, but they were doing a screening of Listen Up, Philip, and they had access to Jonathan Pryce, and he was going to come and do a Q&A, and the programmer was like, I gotta take this opportunity to do Jumping Jack Flash screening.
Hell yeah.
And license the print of Jumping Jack Flash and was like, Jonathan, can you just jump in and do the intro before you do the Q&A for the other movie?
Well, I didn't spoil the movie. I wish I could
schedule them against each other.
All right, wrap us up. We're done.
Hoai-Tran, Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Is there any larger...
Come on back.
Well, please. Door's always open. Any larger Satoshi Kon thoughts across the other films that you will not be on for?
I just think that he is a singular director who has made nothing but masterpieces, as I was texting David before. All killer, no filler.
Yes. He did make an album called All Killer, No Filler with Sum 41. He was the bassist.
Unfortunately, that album was not great.
Yes. It's his one miss. And I'm so happy that you guys are doing a series on him and hopefully giving more, of a spotlight to a director that I think is often overlooked. Maybe this series will get a Millennium Actress remake off the ground. Who knows?
Clint, if your ears are burning. Clint's a big blankie.
He's a huge blankie.
I don't understand why they haven't done Tarantino yet. Could someone explain this to me? Why does Barbara deserve a miniseries? Directing's the thing she's fifth most known for.
My Clint really is becoming just gruffer Biden in real time.
I was about to say. Yeah. The rumble is a little different.
Come on.
There you go. We got a little bit of that drawl.
It would be funny if they did a Biden version of Millennium Actress, and there's a whole scene with Corn Pop. Anyway,
this is a good pitch.
Do you have
Clint
anything you
plays
want to plug?
Biden as
you have a podcast?
Millennium President.
I have a podcast, Checking Through Time and Space. It's a Doctor Who, Star Trek watch podcast.
I keep demanding to go on it.
Yes.
And you won't invite me.
Well,
I think because
I'll invite you on at some point.
All right, fine.
I would also love an invitation.
I'll invite both of you guys on. I would love to.
I know you don't do a lot of guests.
We don't do guests because it's the premise of it is that I'm a Doctor Who fan. My co-host Jacob Hall is a Star Trek fan, and we show each other our favorite shows. We would do episode by episode little, breakdowns of each one.
What are you up to now? Where have you? Or do you cherry pick?
So we're doing a bit of a temporal pincer movement in our Doctor Who watch because we're halfway through, we're almost at the end of Matt Smith, but we've made our way back to doing the first season of the first Doctor, William Hartnell.
Oh, wow.
And then we're doing like season by season, going back and forth between modern New Who and classic Who.
That's cool.
And with Star Trek, we're at season 3 of TNG, which I have been told many times is the best season.
The best season.
Yeah. So I'm excited. Listen to our podcast. It's on, all podcast platforms. And I'm also at Inverse. You can see my writing there, inverse.com. And sadly, still on Twitter.
Get off.
Hoai-Tran Bui.
Get out of there.
Yep.
That's me leaving Twitter.
I keep saying, I just feel like I got to go down with the ship. Like, I'm never going to quit. I'm not going to join a new place.
We're playing those violins.
Exactly.
Up until the end.
Yeah.
When I really knew I was over it was when the Oscars happened, and I didn't, because I could have posted on Blue Sky, right? Like done a thing where I'm like, and I was like, I've lost the urge to post.
I did love how little impulse I had.
Yeah.
That I was
it's going away. Yeah.
I'm not trying to generate jokes, and if I say something funny at the party, there is no part of me that immediately wants to transcribe
Get
it.
that up
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
We're cutting it off slowly.
Yeah.
Weaning ourselves off.
Like I woke up to the next morning, people complaining about Jonathan Glazer's speech, and I was like, oh, how great that I missed this. I'm reading the response to a response of a thing that would have annoyed me.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah. And I was just like, great. I was just watching the show in a room of people.
I mean, I could have guessed, but yeah.
But I didn't have to hear it in real time or read it.
All right, we're done. Come on, wrap us up.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty, our co-producer. Thank you to AJ McKeon, Alex Barron, for editing the show. AJ McKeon, also our production coordinator. Thank you to JJ Birch for our research. Leigh Montgomery, the Great American Novel, for our theme song. Joe Bowen, Pat Reynolds for our artwork. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, like our Patreon Blank Check special features, where right now we're still deep in the sewers, I imagine.
Why do I always close this before?
This is a rookie mistake. 9 years
May
in.
12th. Yeah, we're deep in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's right.
Tune in next week for Tokyo Godfathers.
Yeah.
And as always,
the part I really loved was chasing him. That handsome chair.